Former Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta has been appointed to head the African Union Election Observation Mission to South Africa. South Africans will go to the polls next month in a hotly contested election. The AU team is expected to observe the elections from the 21st of May to the 3rd of June. Kailihle Kumalo has more.
The objectives of the African Union Election Observation Mission in South Africa are quite clear: to provide impartial reporting and assessment of the quality of the 29 May general elections, to ensure that the polls meet regional, continental and international standards for democratic election. The AU observers will also offer recommendations for improvement of future elections based on findings. They'll further demonstrate the AU's solidarity and support towards South Africa's elections and democratization process, to ensure that the conduct of democratic, credible and peaceful election to have a good governance, peace and stability in the country.
And finally, U.S. Ambassador to South Africa Ruben Bridgetty says he agrees that Washington and South Africa can work together in resolving the differences in their approaches to the war in Ukraine and Israel's bombardment of Gaza. South Africa and the U.S. have different views and approaches to some global challenges, including the war in Ukraine and the Israeli bombardment of Gaza. Bridgetty spoke to SABC News.
The United States recognizes the very important role that South Africa has, both as a leader in Southern Africa, as a leader on the continent of Africa, as a leader in the entirety of the Global South, as the only African member in the group of 20 countries, and other specific places where South Africa's voice, unique voice, is incredibly important.
Recapping the top story, the father of black business, Dr. Sam Mutsunyane, has died. The SABC has confirmed he died yesterday afternoon at the age of 97. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines: tragic loss, former world champion boxer Dingaan Tombela has passed away. And we also have victory for Mamelodi Sundowns, extending their unbeaten run to 23 league matches. All this and more just before 6:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning from the traffic desk. A report of a spillage incident at Heidelberg. There is some queuing pressure there on the N3, just coming up in towards the R23, the Balfour exit. We'll keep an eye on that. Let you know whether you'll need to divert and just how bad the traffic conditions will be. Joburg bound coming into Heidelberg after the Hooks Plaza, slower than you might be expecting this morning. Stationary truck on the N3 at Van Buren, that's been cleared. You've got the left lane closure for roadworks, but the broken down truck is out of the way. Roadworks between Bolito and La Mercy for motorists that use the M4 around the Tonga Beach area. That will be slow again through the rush hour this morning. And Cape Town, we start with a crash on the N2 into town at Mew Way. There is a closure there. Slow moving traffic already through from Spine Road. Lights are out on Baden Powell at Strandfontein Road, and just generally out of Mitchell's Plain. Routes already queuing and under pressure. AZ Berman to the R300, R300 to the M7, and then Highlands Drive and Morgansteer leaving towards the M7 junction. All of those routes noticeably busy this morning. I'm Rob Byrne. SAFM Sunrise starts now.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
6 minutes after 6, good morning. Welcome to SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Really good to have you along with us this morning, and glad that you are indeed with us this morning. And I hate to sort of start the morning with not one, but in fact two people passing. And the passing of two people, completely unrelated incidents. The first is Dingaan Tombela, the Rose of Soweto. And I think if I had to look at any kind of old newspaper, I'd know immediately the era I was in if I saw a picture of him, because he's so sort of defined that era, the sort of 1990s, moving into 1994, then again in 2000 when he had a bit of a comeback. For me, he's sort of, he's the kind of person, if you see that headline in any old newspaper, you know exactly where you are, don't you, in that time. And I'm sort of that generation when I was starting to sort of read and look at what was going around, and everyone was talking about Dingaan Tombela. And of course, as a boxer, really, I suppose, had no equal maybe in our history, and I know that's a very controversial controversial thing to say, and I'm no expert in boxing, but someone who made his own mark. He was the WBO lightweight champion in 1990 to 1992, the WBA lightweight champion in 1993, the WBC super lightweight champion in 2000. And I think there was a little bit of a sort of comeback after that, which didn't really work out very well. But certainly someone who played a big role and defined an era. And I think we look back at some of the people who defined that era in all sorts of different ways, don't we? Because he was someone who, I think, typified coming out of Soweto, being able to sort of take on the world on his own terms, being a huge success, an international name, as at a time when everything was changing in South Africa. Such an important time. And I think Dingaan Tabela, people will remember him very, very, very fondly in many ways. It seems, he was just 57 when he passed. I understand that he was found in his flat. He had suffered some sort of illness, and I'm sure more and more will come out. And then the other person who passed away, Dr. Sam Motsenyane, at the age of 97. And if you want to go back to how business works, how the economy works, he's one of the people you would start with. 1964, he started the National African Federated Chamber of Commerce, known as NAVCOC. In 1964, can you imagine trying to operate a business as a black business owner? Where do you get the capital from? Was the first thing. And there'd been generations of black business owners before. I've read sort of half a book about it. Didn't finish it. I need to go back and look at it. That goes back to some of the first sort of black traders, in the 1880s. But he was carrying on a tradition and maybe in a way keeping it alive. And someone who played an immense role, as I say. Can you imagine sort of doing that in the 1960s? Became an ambassador later, if I recall correctly, after things changed in the 1990s. So two people we've lost, Dingaan Tabela and Dr. Sam Motsenyane, in the last 24 hours, in the last 12 hours, really. Lots going on around our elections this morning. The Electoral Commission asking police to expedite their investigations into a claim that controversies were filed fraudulent signatures as part of its registration process. And to register to contest the elections, you have to have signatures, especially if you're a new party. As I understand the portal, what it does is it'll check that the person exists, that there's an ID number, that the person is sort of still alive. It can check those things. It can't check the signature. And I know checking a signature is quite a difficult thing to do, actually. As I understand it, MK is not the only party that these claims have been made about. So I think there's quite a lot that's sort of going to come out of all of this. We'll speak a little bit more about it as we go through the show. I think it's quite important. A statement from the presidency yesterday about the head of news and current affairs, Mosheshe Munare, and of course he, works here at the SABC. He's in charge of, the news bulletins, the current affairs programming that you hear here on SAFM, and that's just part of what is an immensely big job, probably the biggest job in South African journalism. In fact, I think we could safely say that it is the biggest job in South African journalism. And what happened, as I told you yesterday, what happened is last week he received a phone call from the State Security Agency saying he had to go through a lie detector test, a polygraph test, as part of his vetting. Munare says that he went through the vetting process when he was appointed 2 years ago. He says that it's quite weird that someone would come now just before an election and say you have to go through this part of the process. He says there was no requirement at the time. Would you want to go through a lie detector test? As far as I know, they're not admissible in court, so it's a very strange sort of thing. The presidency and President Cyril Ramaphosa saying that the president would never be a part of the harassment of journalists, that it's sort of routine to vet people, that when Munare took on the job, he knew that he would be vetted. And they're sort of saying that there's nothing in it. The State Security Agency, won't say who's been vetted and who won't. I have to say, for me, this entire story is in the timing. It's really in the timing. If this had happened after the elections, I don't know if it would be such a big thing. But it does come after the recording published in the Sunday Times of Ramaphosa and ANC leaders discussing the way that journalists report on the ANC and being very frustrated at how journalists were being critical of the ANC. And so obviously it looks like a response to that, and whether it is or not is difficult to know. The president denies that it is. But it's all in the timing. And if the State Security Agency had waited 5 weeks, would this be such a big issue? I don't know if it would. And that's what I think makes people suspicious. That, and then the context, how often we've seen the ANC trying to put pressure on the SABC. And I say that as someone who works here, I think, and just speaking only for myself, but also as someone who's been watching our politics for many years, long before I came here. And remember what Fikile Mbalula, the Secretary General of the ANC, said after the last elections. He was very angry at the SABC. So there's a lot going on there. Bheki Cele, the police minister, he was in Kanyamanzane in Mpumalanga. He said yesterday, there were calls actually, people living there said they want the community policing forum to be trained and armed to fight crime. He also spoke about gender-based violence. In Mpumalanga in 3 months had over 700 cases of GBV being reported, and some major issue all around the country, and we know how difficult it is. Patricia de Lille on the campaign trail, the leader of the Good Party, currently the Minister for Tourism, she hit back at John Steenhuisen. Now, John Steenhuisen, the leader of the DA, has been telling people not to vote for small parties. He's called them popcorn parties in the last couple of days. His sort of argument is that people in the Western Cape should not allow power to go to small parties, which is, an argument that I don't know if it really flies. But Patricia de Lille basically saying that John Steenhuisen is a fool. You know how they love each other, Patricia de Lille and John Steenhuisen, right? She also says, I quite like this, it's a typical Patricia de Lille comment, I can't spell retirement. Okay, Patricia, we get it. Anyway, I thought that was quite funny. You can't spell retirement. Clearly someone who knows where boxing gloves are. Let me put it like that. All right, good to have you along with us this morning. You know how it works. You call us 086 000 2032. You SMS 41391. You tweet us FM Radio and at Stephen Grootes. You send your WhatsApp voice notes to 0614 104 107. There's been an interesting ruling about the smoking of dagga and the workplace. And basically, someone was fired, not because they arrived at work intoxicated, but because they had smoked a joint the night before, and a blood test picked it up. The Labour Appeal Court has said to the employer, you can't actually do that. And is there a difference, I ask you? I'm no expert on these matters. Is there a difference between smoking a joint at night and having a couple of drinks at night? Won't you let me know, please? I don't know. 086 000 2032. It's 6:15.
The Daily News Diary on SAFM.
What was Adam do? You think Ann Noosa might know? I don't know. Do you think Ann Noosa knows?
She does not know anything.
Wow, there's a little bit of a silence there, Anne. Good morning.
Good morning, Stephen.
How are things in the diary this morning?
Well, reaction following comments from the presidency denying those reports that the SABC's Group Executive for News and Current Affairs, Moshoeshoe Monare, is being targeted ahead of the 2024 general elections. The director of the Media Monitoring Africa has actually questioned why any news editor in the country should be subjected to vetting by the State Security Agency.
It's a fair question, I think. And the silence from the State Security Agency on this is also fairly deafening.
True. Today is also the deadline for respondents that's in the IEC MK party matter to file answering affidavits should they wish to oppose the IEC's bid, seeking clarity on Section 47, subsection 1E of the Constitution. The Constitutional Court had granted the MK party an extension until today to file. And the Mayor of Ekurhuleni is expected to outline his plans and programs aimed at taking the city forward. It's 2 weeks after taking office. The Mayor Nkosindiphi Gaza is set to deliver his maiden State of the City address. We know that Gaza is the former MMC for Finance and Economic Development and the city. And following his appointment, he promised residents that service delivery is his top priority and that he will serve the city with honour and integrity. A coalition of health advocacy groups will today march to the offices of the Gauteng Health Department. Section 27, the Cancer Alliance, the Treatment Action Campaign and patients, they are demanding that the department spend monies about over 700 million rand that's set aside by the Gauteng Treasury to actually outsource radiation oncology services for over 3,000 people with cancer that are currently on the backlog list.
This is crazy. The money was budgeted not in the last budget this year, but in the budget last year in March. 784 million rand. And it hasn't been spent. So people are dying while the money is there and the money hasn't been spent. That's how I understand the story.
Question the rationale in that?
Well, It's about how things work in the Gauteng Health Department. Really, and I mean, how often have we had that conversation?
Yeah.
Other issues today?
The Senzomewa murder trial set to continue. That's after an early adjournment yesterday. That's for the defense to be furnished with more documents pertaining to cell phone evidence. The cell phone data analyst Gideon Gous is expected to be cross-examined by the defense. And just lastly, the remains of the 45 Botswana nationals killed in an Easter bus crash will be repatriated today.
Such a sad story, that. And Musa, thank you. I'm going to go and conduct scientific research. You'll hear the advice from lawyers about dagga, drinking and the workplace in about half an hour. 18 minutes now after 6 o'clock.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
Let's have a look at your weather around the country this morning. Tshwane, fine, 8 and 25. Johannesburg, fine, 7 and 24. Vereeniging, fine, 7 and 24. Bombela, fine, 16 and 27. Polokwane, fine, 11 and 27. Mahakeng, partly cloudy, 10 and 28. Vryburg, fine, 11 and 28. Mangaung, partly cloudy, 9 and 28. Kimberley, partly cloudy, 13 and 30. Uppington, fine, 18 and 28. Cape Town, cloudy, a light to moderate northerly wind, 15 and 19. George, cloudy to partly cloudy, morning fog, fine by the afternoon, a light and variable wind, 15 and 22. Gqeberha, cloudy with mist at first and evening, otherwise fine, a light northeasterly wind, 16 and 29. East London, partly cloudy, a light northeasterly wind, 15 and 33. Durban, eThekwini, fine, a light to moderate northerly wind, 17 and 30. Richards Bay, fine, a light to moderate northerly wind, 17 and 32. And Pietermaritzburg, fine, 13 and 32.
Keeping up with your TV license balance inquiries is now simpler than ever. No more waiting in queues. No more phone calls. Just SMS your ID or TV license account number to 44210 and secure your legal viewing fast and simple. Standard SMS rates will be charged. Terms and conditions apply. TV licenses. Pay yours. Make a difference.
So sell your car for the best price and we won't think about it twice. We buy cars, we buy cars. We buy cars, we buy cars.
We buy cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
The students from Fort Hare University have calculated that only a win will elevate them from the bottom half. Meanwhile, Thunderbirds ladies are in dire need of 3 points to escape from the basement. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Catch the queens of the beautiful game, the University of Fort Hare versus Thunderbirds ladies, on Wednesday 1 May at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. #We love it here. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international news.
20 minutes after 6, good morning. It's now being reported that Hamas is considering a new framework that would see the group releasing 33 Israeli hostages in return for Israel pausing its offensive in Gaza. It would then look at implementing what would be called a period of sustainable calm. Israel's threatened to move to a full-scale offensive in Rafah, where over 1 million Palestinians are living in tents or under plastics or in the open after they were forced out of the rest of Gaza. Israeli airstrikes killed at least 25 Palestinians in Rafah yesterday. You know, of course, the conflict started when Hamas launched those attacks on Israel in October last year. In response, Israel's killed, I think the latest figures around 30,000 Palestinians in Gaza. Dr. Kingsley Makobela is a risk analyst, a former diplomat. He joins us now. Dr. Makobela, good morning, and thank you for your time this morning.
Good morning, Stephen. What a pleasure to join you this morning.
So we see these sort of frameworks for peace being rolled out. They're clearly being discussed. Is there a chance we are finally getting closer to some kind of agreement between Israel and Hamas that can stop this terrible fighting?
You know, I think, Stephen, it's unlikely to really restore some level of calm. If you look at the latest offer that Israel is making, has the same demand that have been rejected by Hamas previously, and Israel has acknowledged that Hamas is unlikely to accept this. The phase release of certain hostages, which initially was to release elderly women and later on release women soldiers and so on, and later release the soldiers. Now they are speaking about a restoration of sustainable calm, which is a new language that has been brought in terms of this. I think Hamas is unlikely to accept this. It will create divisions within Hamas to accept this at this point. Of course, it has been backed by rhetoric from Israel to start the much anticipated assault on Rafah. And I really don't think Hamas would accept this.
So then what happens? Israel continues, it does an offensive in Rafah, right? I mean, sort of doing that already, but it has, let's say, a ground offensive in Rafah. And as has been said many times, there's no place left for Palestinians to go. And in a way, I keep remembering what Professor Abel Eerstehuizen told us at the very beginning of this conflict. It would be a mistake for Israel to go into Gaza without an achievable goal. So I don't know what the goal would be. What do they achieve by going into Rafah? Except, unless, and this is the other sort of claim, that Israel just wants to sort of remove Palestinians from Gaza completely.
Stephen, it has been the main objective of Israel from the onset. I think they've made it quite clear that their mission was to totally destroy Hamas. And there's an acknowledgement that they have failed. But I think what is going on now has to do, to a very large extent, with what is going on in the United States. The elections are coming up this November, and you're starting to see college students really demonstrating and showing support for the Palestinian cause. That's what the Biden administration is mainly worried about. The election coming up with a cohort of young people who are really mobile in terms of communication and so on, and the elections coming up. That is the biggest worry for the Americans, more than anything else, because the Americans now are even divided. I've seen a report that within the State Department, there are concerns about the weapons that are sent to Israel that are being used against innocent Palestinians. So you're starting to see serious policy divisions that the Biden administration is desperately trying to patch now. And of course, within Israel itself, the far-right elements within the coalition government, they want the military to go ahead. On the other side, Stephen, the ICC, it's contemplating to issue out a warrant of arrest for certain people, including the Prime Minister. So all this political dynamics are having a serious impact in terms of how the Israelis are moving, how they intend to move, because that creates a huge problem. The Americans have started to come up to say the ICC has no jurisdiction on the Israeli-Gaza conflict.
Okay, so then, in a way, I mean, this is another sign that Israel just went too far, didn't it? I mean, it has gone so far that its Western allies, and crucially, as you say, the United States, can't back it any further. And then the question of what would happen in Gaza after the conflict, for example, Israel just won't really address that. And that kind of proves the point in a way.
Well, there are elements even within the far right. They've started to move in certain areas. They are preparing to move into Gaza to expand the occupation. So these are huge challenges that Israelis are having now, particularly the government. They really don't know how to handle the situation. The Americans have tried to appease the domestic part by saying they would impose sanctions on certain far-right elements, but it's not being helpful. The government is more than divided, this coalition, and the war cabinet, it's essentially has come to a grinding stop now. You recall after the Iranian attack, I mean, it took the war cabinet more than 4 days sitting in perpetual meetings without any firm decisions. Those are indications of serious divisions within the government as to what to do next. And what they did next was basically to try to appease the far right by attacking things that are really insignificant within Iran. So it's a serious challenge within government. There's pressure for Prime Minister Netanyahu to step down within Israel, and there's international pressure mounting. I really don't know how the Israelis are going to act. Usually when Israelis, particularly Netanyahu, is boxed in this manner, he acts very irrationally.
Dr. Kingsley Mokobela, thank you very much indeed. Really do appreciate it. A risk analyst, a conflict resolution specialist, and a former diplomat. 27 minutes after 6.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai Khan, good morning.
Good morning, Steve-O.
The Dingaan Tobela, the Rose of Soweto, defined an era, hey?
It did indeed. What a somber day for us in South African sport. The Rose of Soweto, a true boxing legend and national hero. Well, we're mourning the loss. He passed away at the age of 57. Tobela's death was confirmed after he was found unresponsive in his Johannesburg apartment. Now, during his 16-year career, starting in 1990, Tobela became a national icon, claiming 3 world titles across 2 weight divisions. His achievements including the WBO lightweight title, the WBA lightweight crown, and the WBC super middleweight title. Tobela's legacy as a formidable athlete and a beloved figure in boxing history remains undisputed. Now, soccer news, where Mamelodi Sundowns defeated TS Galaxy 3-0 at Loftus Versfeld Stadium and moved to within 1 result of clinching the DStv Premiership title. Peter Shalulile netted a first-half brace to take his personal tally against Galaxy to 7 goals in as many games. And we also had the substitute, Temenkosi Lorch, adding the 3rd in the 2nd stanza as Downs moved to 23 unbeaten league matches this season. Now, with this win, Sundowns will be crowned champions if they win in their next game against rivals Kaizer Chiefs at FNB Stadium on Thursday, and they will do that with 6 matches to spare. More soccer news now. Manchester United are willing to listen to offers for virtually all their first-team squad this season, as Sir Jim Ratcliffe is looking to turn the club back into challengers for major honours. It's understood Marcus Rashford is on the list, although club sources are adamant their preference is to keep the England striker and work with him to restore the form that brought him 30 goals for the first time. Now, Paris Saint-Germain have previously been linked externally with Rashford and are set to lose starman Kylian Mbappe, although sources in the past have distanced the Champions League semi-finalists from a move to the 26-year-old. Now, women's rugby, the experienced Springbok women's players, Nomawetu Mabenge, Lusanda Dumka and Sizopila Salonsi have been included in the national squad for Rugby South Africa's Cup in Madagascar next month, where qualification for the 2025 Rugby World Cup in England is at stake. Now, Springbok women head coach Louis Kuhn named a squad of 28 players, 16 forwards and 12 backs to travel to Antananarivo, where South Africa will be up against Cameroon, Kenya and Madagascar for the title of Champions of Africa. Here's the Springbok women head coach Louis Kuhn.
Yeah, thank you. We are blessed to have some more experienced girls back for this campaign. Sizo, Lusanda and Nomawetu, they are more experienced Springboks that have been to World Cups, and they return from injury, so we're very thankful for them being back in the squad. They will really bring some very much needed experience to our group. And then also Snare from the Free State are possibly going to make a debut for the 15s team. She's been a Springbok Sevens player.
We'll bring you more sport. Top of the hour on Sunrise. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. All right, more to come in the next half hour about the situation regarding the use of dagga and the workplace. You with SFM leading the conversation. Good morning at 6:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, bad news for motorists is that the price of petrol is set to increase by around 37 cents a litre from midnight tonight. The Department of Energy says the price of diesel will decrease by up to 36 cents per litre and illuminating paraffin will go down by 25 cents a litre at the retail level. The father of black business, Dr. Sam Mutsuenane, has died. The SABC has confirmed he died yesterday afternoon at the age of 97. And former Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta has been appointed to head the African Union Election Observation Mission to South Africa. South Africans will go to the polls next month in a hotly contested election. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAFM. guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Roadworks back on the M1 coming out of Soweto, moving through towards Ridderport. The right lane closed around Albertina Sisulu Road, around the Moresburg exit. And traffic is just starting to build up there. Crash on the entry north at Linksfield. That's going to start to disrupt traffic flow generally through the Galulis interchange. At the M1 north, heading through to Winnie Mandela, the four-ways exit, just starting to slow up as well. Just south of Durban, if you're on your way down towards the south coast, there is some queuing pressure. They're just approaching the Prospecton exit from about the M4 Southern Freeway join. You just join a queue of traffic down to the Prospecton Road exit. The Marion Hill section, very busy on Richmond Road in the central Marion Hill area. And then again, more queues up towards the N3 highway. Busy out of Phoenix, the Phoenix Highway, JG Champion. Those options out towards the R102 are already under some queuing pressure. Cape Town, crash on the side of the N2 inbound at Mewway. That's slowing traffic coming through from the Spine Road exit. And traffic lights are out this morning. I think they may have been out yesterday. It was very busy in that sort of Durbanville, Brackenfell area. It's a big junction, Eversdale, De Bron and Fairtrees. If you got caught there last night, likely you get caught again this morning. No lights at that junction. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
Quintal Lenglachela, good morning.
Morning, Stephen. I hope you're well.
All good, thanks. How are the markets this morning?
Well, volatility has somewhat subsided, with U.S. stocks ending the day in the green. The upbeat performance was boosted by tech stocks, particularly Tesla, whose share price surged 15%. Investors on that end are also gearing up for a week dominated by corporate earnings and a Fed meeting. In Asia, those stocks tracking the upbeat mood we've been seeing from Wall Street, but caution remains as markets await those policy moves, as I mentioned, especially at a time when inflation is sticky. Back at home, the JSE followed the broadly positive cues from Wall Street, with the all-share closing 1.4% higher. In currency action, the rand continued a three-day winning streak, trading at 18.69 against the dollar.
And then Philips has settled this US respiratory device case. That'll be very important for them.
Philips has been battling a number of issues since 2021, Stephen, particularly over its Dream Station machines, which are used for a sleeping disorder. Now, it emerged that foam fitted in those machines could degrade, releasing potentially toxic particles into masks worn by patients. Now, this resulted in Philips halting new sales of the machines in the United States following a series of recalls. And things in the US had been heating up as Philips was also slapped with a lawsuit. It did manage to contain that as it reached an agreement to pay $1.1 billion to settle the respiratory case. Now, despite agreeing to the settlement, it has not admitted to any fault or liability, or that any injuries were caused by the devices. Investors, however, were pleased by the move, saying that the settlement was much lower than expected. This saw its share price close 29% higher.
And then foreign investors still looking at value in South Africa.
Now, this is according to PwC's latest economic report, showing that South Africa received close to 100 billion rand in foreign direct investment so far this year, equaling 1.4% of GDP. This comes despite being dealt multiple blows, including risks associated with the upcoming national election, slow growth, as well as electricity and water supply issues. Now, inflows have been larger than outflows, and South Africa has delivered net inflows almost every year since the global financial crisis. According to the report, Stephen, foreign investors are seeing value in the country as they remain positive about South Africa's financial services, communication industries, the strong tertiary institutions, natural resources, as well as the positivity that they've been seeing, or rather a certain level of political and policy stability within the country.
Quintal Lenglachela, thank you very much indeed. Back, of course, in an hour's time.
Africa Update on SAFM Sunrise, a continental overview of current African affairs.
Russ Advocate Sipho Mantula. Sipho, before we start, Uhuru Kenyatta coming to be he'll be in charge of the AU electoral mission. How important is that?
Stephen, refreshing morning, Jambo Africa to the listeners. Interesting to bring Uhuru Kenyatta because we know how his passion and his love for the election, Stephen, has been, since being a former president, has been given that role. But remember, he came here to come and mediate on the Tigray conflict. So he might be bringing that knowledge, experience of a former head of state.
All right, and then staying with Kenya, the African heads of states convened in Nairobi for the International Development Association. Has anything come out of that yet?
Stephen, something came out there because William Grootes was opening that meeting. He was raising what he called agent crisis and challenges that are facing Africa and the issues around these demand-driven programs, loans, concessions, and also looking at how to look at what you call long-term developmental strategies for Africa, looking at also the money that has been given by the International Development Association to the continent being only 18 billion. And let alone even the continent having many challenges. And that's why you are having many projects in the continent. Almost out of 75 countries, 39 of them are within the African continent. So they must benefit the people of the African continent so that they deal with issues of poverty as well as economic growth.
And then in Sudan, of course, they're locked in that conflict at the moment. The Russian deputy foreign minister, he was there. Does that show he's backing a side?
Stephen Mikhail Bogadanov, the Deputy Foreign Affairs Minister, being in Khartoum, he's in the side of Al-Burhan. Now, he's in the Sudanese army, as others are saying, that he's going to engage with them of establishing cooperation. Others are saying he's now legitimizing the Sovereign Council led by Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. Despite that, Stephen, we know that Hamadan Dagalo also visited Russia before the conflict of Russia and Ukraine. That will show you how Russia is moving now in its diplomacy towards the Sudan conflict. And remember, you still have the Wagner group that are still active in the illicit gold mining in Sudan.
And then the European Union says it will limit visas for people from Ethiopia. Why is this?
Stephen, they are claiming that it's not helping to take back their citizens who are going to into the European member states illegal. They are now saying that it will take longer now to get a visa, and that is also extended to the diplomatic and service passports who won't have their visa fees waived. And also, when I talk about the period, Stephen, when you apply for visa, it will take 15 days, 2 weeks, but it will now take more than a month and 2 weeks. It will take 45 days. That's how the EU is punishing the Horn of Africa through Addis Ababa, now saying that they won't allow them. They are claiming that in 2016 they had more than 380,000 people who came into EU illegal.
And then you're looking at Namibia, the South African High Commissioner there talking about Namibia and South Africa.
Stephen, it was important for our High Commissioner in Windhoek, Ethel Mtinso, saying that as they were celebrating the Freedom Day, saying that advancing broad solidarity, partnership, Ubuntu and Pan-African unity, crediting the role of Namibia in assisting South Africa during the liberation struggle, but also going into the files of the United Nations Resolution 435 that also pushed for the move out of the SADC then in Namibia. So you are showing the role that Namibia has been playing in assisting South Africa in attaining its freedom and liberation post-1994.
And Sipho, I know you've got an archive about Lesotho, but also Dr. Sam Motsenyane, passing away. What a role he played.
Stephen, very sad. I'm calling him ambassador, but others are calling him the father of the black business. But he was our ambassador in Saudi Arabia in 1996 to 2000, an ambassador in Yemen, Oman. Stephen, those what you call the Gulf states. Our elder has played that role in terms of even what you can call agriculture in the early years, and to set up a federation for black commerce, or what you call black business community. That was very important during his time, being a member of parliament. So it is important when you look at his role that he has been a diplomat. So he was pushing economic diplomacy at that level and passing at the age of 97.
Russ Advocate Sipho Mantula, thank you very much indeed. 19 minutes now to 7.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Calls coming through this morning. Sapiwe in Midvaal in Gauteng. Hi. You want to talk about, is this prepaid electricity meters?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Go for it.
Please forgive me, my English is not that good, ne?
That's all right. Go for it.
Yes, I stay in Midvaal. Let's say you owe them 2,000 rand rate and tax, ne?
Yeah.
Now you pay 1,000 rand, ne? Because you're short of money.
Mm-hmm.
Right. If your electricity is used up, you must go and recharge it. Let's say you can recharge for 200 rands.
Yeah.
They take 60 rands out of 200 rands. Now you end up paying 140 rands, no?
Why do they take 60 rand?
I'm shocked. I thought people were crazy. But now when I see the receipt, the recharge slip, I say they are right. I don't know whether Mr. Steve Ovo, we can call one of them officials from Meatin Midval to come and explain to us what is happening in fact.
So they're taking the money, they're taking 60 rand from your 200 rand for electricity, and you say it's because you owe them money for other services. Is that the issue?
Yes, it's like that. It's like that,
Sure.
Mr. Steve Ovo.
I don't know if people are allowed to do that or not. Okay.
We are shocked. Yeah. I wonder if you can call one of them and explain to us what is happening in Midval.
And there can be other things, because I know sometimes government, and the way that NERSA and all the rest do things, there are other charges on meters. All right, Sapiwe, I'm going to take your number if that's all right. I'm going to look at Mdu and Stanza and see if we're able to track down someone from Midval. May not be today, but let's see what we can do. Sapiwe, I'm sorry to hear that. Thank you. It must have been really irritating. Paul in Dobsonville, hi. Is it emailing or e-hailing? It's e-hailing you want to talk about.
The e-hailing.
Yes.
I'm following the e-hailing.
Yeah.
I've heard about this new e-hailing, the one they call Shisha.
Yes, this is the one that's run with the Gauteng government and the taxi organizations too.
Yes, I would like these people from e-hailing, if they can come and explain to us how it's going to work, because I'm an e-hailing driver.
Yeah.
But they're going to force us to leave, board in Uber, and then join them, or what would be the procedure?
Yeah.
Because, taxis have got a history of violence. So
Sure.
that's what we understand.
All right.
So we go out there to work as from the 1st of May. We should know exactly what is expected of us.
So is it supposed to start tomorrow?
They said they're going to launch it tomorrow, according to the recording that we saw.
Oh. Okay,
So
Paul. Yeah, Paul. I think I know exactly who I'm going to call about this. Leave this with me for a few hours. We may do it today, we may do it tomorrow, but I think I know where we're going to go. 16 minutes to 7.
Real savings, real benefits. Here's what real clients say about OUTsurance.
My name is Adam. I'm 71 years of age and I live in Douglasdale. I'm paying 554 Rand a month for my 2022 Nissan Magnite.
Want a car insurance premium that'll blow your mind? SMS out to 30754 now for a quote. It's quick, it's easy, and it could save you hundreds of rands every month. Here's Amy.
To anyone who has not reached out to OUTsurance, what are you doing? Reach out today.
Blow your mind, not your paycheck. SMS out to 30754 and see for yourself why OUTsurance was voted Best Car Insurer 2023 by the Star and Pretoria newsreaders. Here's Yusuf.
It just shows that OUTsurance is top of the tops when it comes to insurers.
SMS out to 30754 now. That's out to 30754. OUTsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's, and limits apply. Premiums are risk profile dependent and reviewed annually. Client comments do not constitute financial advice.
The University Registrar and Secretary to Convocation, Dr. Joel Baloy, cordially invites all members of the University of Venda Convocation to attend the AGM on Saturday, 11 May 2024 in Polokwane, Merupa Hotel at 10:30. The AGM will consider the Vice-Chancellor State of Campus Report, the President of Convocation Report, and amendments to the Constitution of the Convocation. To RSVP and confirm attendance, please visit www.univen.ac.za/announcements or contact Mr. Mashuda Ramarebo on 060-906-1902.
The debate of universities will be witnessed on the field of play. The varsity derby between Amatax ladies and UJ ladies. Who are the most intelligent students? This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Catch the queens of the beautiful game. University of Pretoria ladies versus University of Johannesburg ladies on Sunday 5 May at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag we love it here. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
SAFM values your views. Be an active citizen.
14 minutes to 7. Good morning. The Labour Appeal Court has ruled against the company Barlow World. They fired a worker because repeated blood tests showed she had been using cannabis, or as you and I would put it, smoking dacha. The worker, she did not come to work intoxicated. She didn't use heavy machinery. Rather, she had smoked a joint at home in the evening, as you know, the Constitutional Court has ruled that you are allowed to smoke a joint in the evening at home, well, any time of day really, and you're allowed several dacha plants. Of course, it's still not entirely clear where you get them from. Barlow World said it had a zero-tolerance policy for dacha, and so they fired her. The Labour Appeal Court has now ruled in her favour. Sabir Ahmed Jajbai is a Labour legal expert, joins us now. Sabir, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on the show, Stephen.
I can't remember a case like this. I mean, has this happened before? Is this new law?
No, it isn't new law. It is a law that is developing all the time and evolving with the changing circumstances. Now, what is very critical, Stephen, is that this law is a rational law. However, enforcing it in a workplace is something totally different because it can be amount to discrimination. That is what, in essence, was the judgment all about.
In other words, the judges basically said it was unfair. Someone could drink an alcoholic drink at night and go to work the next morning, but you couldn't smoke a joint at night and go to work the next morning.
Absolutely. It sometimes sounds irrational, but remember this, when somebody consumes alcohol, it dissipates from the body almost overnight. In the case of dacha, if you consume dacha, it stays in the body, in the blood system for at least 72 hours. And that is the problem that triggered off this particular case that went all the way to Labour Appeal Court. And I feel that the judgment is very fair and irrational and is reasonable in the circumstances.
So it would have been different if she'd been operating heavy machinery, and she wasn't, right? So if she'd been driving a forklift truck and coming into work the morning after smoking, would that have led to a different outcome?
Definitely. If she was a driver of a forklift, as you quite rightly put it, or any sensitive equipment, then of course that law would have applied. However, very important is that if this person is not intoxicated, doesn't show any signs of intoxication, doesn't show any sign of any restriction on a person's body, then of course that law will come under question again, the rationality of that particular decision of preventing the person from working or handling a forklift. What the company could have done in the circumstances in this case is that they could have suspended this person for a period of 3 months unless she showed a change. In her case, remember this, Stephen, and very important is that she refused when she was asked to give an undertaking that she would stop smoking dacha. She smokes dacha for medicinal purposes and not for recreational purposes. This is critical.
Is it critical? Because, I mean, it is legal to smoke dacha, and I mean, plenty of people, will say they smoke it for medicinal purposes, and they may. A cynic may say they may not. I mean, does it matter why you smoke dacha? The law says that you can.
The law says you can, but in the circumstances, for example, assuming you're smoking dacha and you decide to fly a very expensive SAA jet airliner. I mean, that is ridiculous because obviously you're putting people's lives at jeopardy. In this particular case here, it is critical in a sense that when she gave an undertaking, she refused, just along the line of the Prince case, she refused to say that she will not smoke dacha anymore. That triggered off the irrational decision to dismiss her.
Okay, that makes a bit more sense. The idea of being tested. So what I'm trying to get to is most workplaces don't test to see if you've been intoxicated. I know plenty of places that do. Factories often will have a breathalyzer. As you arrive at work, you have to check, right? And I understand why they do that, although it's always going to be controversial. Does a company have to have a legal reason to test your blood or test whether you're intoxicated in the first place? It can't just be because we want to. They actually have to have a rational reason for that. Would that be right?
Absolutely. It's for operational reasons. For example, in mines, they have this random check-in simply because of the risk that people pose when they come into the workplace if they have been intoxicated. Obviously, if you are a reasonable and responsible employee, knowing full well that you're working in a very sensitive environment, you will not indulge in activity that is going to put you at great risk. This is what the law is all about. It works both ways. Remember, the context is everything. In this particular case, this is a woman that consumed dacha or cannabis for medicinal purposes, not recreational purposes, and that is important in the context of this particular case. It does not necessarily mean that if you're a smoker and then you smoked a joint the night before and you come to work the next morning, that you will be let off the hook. No, it all depends on context. As you quite rightly pointed out, is she not handling any expensive machinery or sensitive equipment? That is critical. So therefore, I would be very careful in thinking that this is carte blanche license for people to smoke a joint the night before in order for them to get away with this.
Sabir Ahmed Jashpipe, thank you, an expert on labour law. Really appreciate it. 7 minutes to 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Heavy backlog through Galuli's interchange this morning. It's been a crash just before Linksfield. It was in the middle lane. They moved it across to the left-hand lane, but there's still that lane obstruction, so very heavy. N3 coming up from Elands, passing Cement Factory, through Van Buren, up through Galuli's. It's all jammed into Edenvale. Behind that, of course, the N12 and R24 routes are now backlogging heavily in towards that N3 North link at Galuli's interchange as well. The run through Midrand, busy rather than heavy, just traffic, just pure volume of traffic, no obstructions, just sitting between the old Joburg Road exit and the new road off-ramp. The Mopani Highway to Pretoria is heavy, queues from the Hairpin Bend section, and still no traffic lights on Roger Dyson at the R101, so that run, as you were yesterday, coming around from the industrial side of Pretoria, heavy backlogs. A lot of traffic on Durban's Marion Hill option this morning, the Richmond Road, leaving Marion Hill Central, and then more queues right the way through to about the N3. Problem on the N2 South, heading down towards Toti, is the stationary truck at Prospecton, and that's got you stuck in a heavy queue right back to the M4 Southern Freeway join point onto the N2. That's a heavy queue going south on the N2. Cape Town this morning, M5 off to a busier start than perhaps you might be expecting. Traffic under pressure from sort of Wetton Road Bridge, Ottery area, all the way through to a busy N2. The N1 inbound backlogging from Plata Cliff Hill through to Kuberg Road, and a crash on the N2 inbound at Muway in front of Khayelitsha. Traffic behind that queuing back to Spine Road. Also, just an update, no lights on Baden-Powell at Strandfontein Road. So Baden-Powell is open, no protesting, but quite a heavy queue through the bottom of Mitchell's Plain, direction Musenberg, through that all-out junction at Strandfontein Road. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
6 minutes to 7. Good morning. The Cancer Alliance, the Treatment Action Campaign, and Section 27 all say the Gauteng provincial government has failed to appoint a single service provider to provide treatment for cancer patients, despite allocating nearly 800 million rand for the service. In other words, in March last year, the Gauteng Health MEC, Nomanto Nkomorala-Goko, announced in her budget speech her department had allocated 784 million rand to outsource radiation oncology services. Now, as I speak to you on the 30th of April, still no service provider has been appointed. Salome Meyer is the director of the Cancer Alliance. Salome, good morning.
Good morning to you, Stephen, and all our listeners.
So the MEC makes this announcement in March last year. It's now over a year later. What's happened in the meantime?
Well, they have advertised a tender in October of last year, but to date, nothing, nobody has been appointed. And we've heard that they are possibly not actually going to appoint somebody, and even further, and that's more worrying, that they think that they can actually use this money to, what they say, is to fix the system. And that is even more worrying, because as patients are sitting, waiting at home, some patients are now being re-diagnosed with recurrences of their cancers. And that is very concerning.
When you say fix the system, do they mean actually providing treatment to people, or do they mean something else?
Well, they say that they're going to actually buy more machines, but by buying more machines, they're not actually going to deal with the current backlog because it'll take them quite a long time to deal with the current backlog. And what is a further concern for us is that there isn't enough staff at the moment even to manage the department. And the reason for that is the salaries of the radiation therapists are not even being attended to. So you have a situation where you don't have enough equipment and not even enough staff to manage the current waiting list of people, what alone about a backlog list.
Okay, so then for what do you want this to be sort of outsourced? How would that work? It would be private companies providing this service, so treating patients in the government system, the government hospital system in Gauteng, and the government hospital system reimbursing them? Is that what the money should be used for?
That is exactly what we're asking for, and we do know that the private sector have got capacity to in fact do this service. We've done our homework. We have actually provided them with information, and we know that it is actually an affordable model because that way you can start dealing with your backlog list and you can continue fixing the system in any way you want to fix the system.
Is the money still in the department? And there's a budgeting process here, and if you don't spend the money, National Treasury comes and says, can we have the money back, please? And in fact, that nearly happened, didn't it?
We don't know. We really do not know. And if the money isn't there, well, then I don't even know what one does. Because how do you then explain to people, sorry, we had money, but no, the money isn't there anymore? How do you explain that?
I presume that people are becoming, some people may even already have passed away as a result of this, but people are, getting diagnosed with secondary cancers. The cancer is spreading because it's something that could be treated and stopped. The capacity is there in the country. It's not being used.
100% correct. So people that receive a cancer diagnosis have hope because they know that there are treatments that can actually work for them to prolong their life. However, now they are actually stripped of their hope and stripped even of their dignity.
Salome Meyer, thank you very much indeed. Director of the Cancer Alliance, that action being undertaken by the TAC in Section 27 as well. In fact, we'll see if we can put in a call to the Gauteng Health Department, give them a right of reply on that. It is an important story, and we'll keep an eye on that for you. In the next little while, the reaction of the South African National Editors Forum to what's been happening around the head of news and current affairs here at the SABC, Mosheshe Munare. Also, more on these sort of claims, it goes in several directions now, that some parties may have issued or may have given fraudulent signatures to the Electoral Commission when they registered for the elections. How seriously can we take this? Is there anything the IEC can do? We'll look at that in the next little while. You are with SFM leading the conversation. Good morning. It's 7 o'clock.
In our top stories, petrol prices set to increase and Colombia suspends pro-Palestinian protesters. Good morning. Bad news for motorists is that the price of petrol is set to increase by around 37 cents a litre from midnight tonight. The Department of Energy says the price of diesel will decrease by up to 36 cents per litre and illuminating paraffin will go down by 25 cents a litre at the retail level. The price of LP gas will decrease by 46 cents per kilogram. The Department of Energy spokesperson Robert Marquez says the increases are due to international factors.
These prices were affected by the higher oil prices and weaker rand during the period under review. The petrol prices are increasing mainly due to higher demand for driving season in the Northern Hemisphere. The slate levy remains unchanged at 21.92 cents a litre on both petrol and diesel. We have also observed that the shipping costs were lower during the period under review compared to the previous period.
The father of black business, Dr. Mutswenyane, has died. The SABC has confirmed he died yesterday afternoon at the age of 97. Mutswenyane was the founding member of the National African Federated Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Tsepa Mungai reports on the life of Dr. Mutswenyane.
Samuel Mweti Mutswenyane was born on the 11th February 1927 at Egenarsfontein Farm in Potchefstroom, Northwest. He is one of the founders of the then largest African business organization, the National African Federated Chamber of Commerce, NAFCOC, in 1964. He led the initiative by NAFCOC to establish the African Bank. Through his business acumen, he mobilized black communities to contribute towards 1 million rand that was required to capitalize the bank. It opened its first branch in Harangua Township in 1975. The bank was created for the primary purpose of providing credit to black South Africans.
Former boxing champ Dingaan Thobela has died at the age of 57. The family says he died in Johannesburg yesterday after suffering an illness. Sfiso Ramara has more on the life of the boxer.
Dingaan Thobela, affectionately known as the Rose of Soweto, is a former three-time world champion. Born in Shawela, Soweto, the 57-year-old Thobela is a former WBO and WBA lightweight champion. Thobela's third world title was the more prestigious WBC super middleweight title he won in the year 2000. He competed professionally between 1990 and 2006.
In election-related news, former Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta has been appointed to head the African Union Election Observation Mission to South Africa. South Africans will go to the polls next month in a hotly contested election. The AU team is expected to observe the elections from the 21st of May to the 3rd of June. Kailihle Kumalo has more.
The objectives of the African Union Election Observation Mission in South Africa are quite clear: to provide impartial reporting and assessment of the quality of the 29 May general elections, to ensure that the polls meet regional, continental and international standards for democratic election. The AU observers will also offer recommendations for improvement of future elections based on findings. They'll further demonstrate the AU's solidarity and support towards South Africa's elections and democratization process, to ensure that the conduct of democratic, credible and peaceful election to have a good governance, peace and stability in the country.
And finally, Columbia University in New York has begun suspending students who failed to dismantle a long-running pro-Palestinian campus protest. Several hundred demonstrators have defied an ultimatum to disperse, saying they will not move until their demands for the college to divert from Israel are met. These students was among them.
We've all been kind of expecting something like this to happen for a while. This is not any new news. A lot of people have been feeling very insecure because of a number of deadlines. It's finals week. Everyone is still working on their finals. But at the end of the day, school is temporary. We're all here as intelligent people who have, autonomy, and we have a lot of privilege in being able to stand up and do what we love and protect the people and communities that we think deserve protection and that are deserving of our time.
Recapping the top story, bad news for motorists is that the price of petrol is set to increase by around 37 cents a litre from midnight tonight. The Department of Energy says the price of diesel will decrease by up to 36 cents per litre and illuminating paraffin will go down by 25 cents a litre at the retail level. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM Sports headlines, sad news as former boxing champion Dingaan Thobela, known as the Rose of Soweto, found deceased in his apartment at the age of 57. And there's a countdown to victory for Mamelodi Sundowns, who could clinch the Premiership title this Thursday. All this and more just before 7:30.
SAFM. guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still queuing on the N3 northbound this morning from Germiston up through towards Edenvale. It's an earlier crash at Linksfield Road in the Edenvale area. The backlog down towards Elands Interchange in the N12 and R24 routes. Pretty heavy coming in from Ekurhuleni to join into that N3 north. Queues on the N12 if you're arriving from Protea Glen up into Joburg, just queuing up to the Golden Highway exit in the El Dorado Park area. Pretoria, Roger Dyson at the R101. Lights are off there, quite sluggish, leaving that Pretoria industrial area round towards the Eupheus Road this morning. Looking okay now, Durban's N2 south. The breakdown at Prospecton seems to be cleared. The N2 north starting to queue quite heavily through Spaghetti Junction into the work zone. Richmond Road is a long queue into Pinetown. Big backlogs from Marion Hill all the way through to the N3 highway. Cape Town, a crash N2 inbound at Meway in front of Khayelitsha. That's pushing traffic back towards Baden-Powell Drive. And there's a big fire raging up on the top of Table Mountain highways going in through Hospital Bend. Might be a little bit slower this morning because of the onlooking factor. Just watch some delays building. Also on that N2 inbound, a crash just happened between Jan Smuts and Rapenburg Road. So N2 inbound pushing back towards the airport. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
7 minutes after 7. Good morning, you with SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. More, of course, on the State Security Agency. President Ramaphosa and the head of News and Current Affairs here at the SABC, Moshesho Monare. We'll get a view on that. Lots of different views on that. We'll get a view on that in the next few minutes. Also, then this issue around sort of signature fraud and the election results process, or the election process rather, the registration process, I mean, how all of that works. I think it could be quite important. We've been looking at and we've been hearing all of these calls for the management of the police to be devolved. In other words, instead of having a sort of national police service, to give the provinces and councils more power. There are arguments in favour of this, but there are arguments against it too. And look at the rivalry we don't really have, but we sort of have between, for example, the SAPS and the Joburg Metro Police Service. I mean, the SAPS shot dead a Metro Police officer who had brought out a gun and looked like she was going to fire on them just a few weeks ago. So we'll look at that issue from 8:30. I think it could be quite interesting. You with SFM. It's good to have you along with us. It's 8 after 7.
Get your payments done with the utmost security and convenience when you purchase a TV license now. With our new secure payment systems with a one-time PIN, OTP feature, and the choice of receiving your OTP via SMS or email, you can ensure prompt and secure payments. The additional use of capture will protect you against spam and automated data attractions. With TV licenses, you can enjoy watching all your favorite shows or movies that matter to you. Get yours today. Visit www.tvlic.co.za.
The students from Fort Hare University have calculated that only a win will elevate them from the bottom half. Meanwhile, Thunderbirds ladies are in dire need of 3 points to escape from the basement. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Catch the queens of the beautiful game, the University of Fort Hare versus Thunderbirds ladies, on Wednesday 1 May at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
9 after 7, good morning. A statement from the presidency yesterday denying that President Cyril Ramaphosa was in any way targeting the head of News and Current Affairs here at the SABC, Moshesho Monare, after the State Security Agency told Monare last week he had to go through a lie detector test as part of a vetting procedure for his job. Monare's been on the job for 2 years. He says he was vetted at the time. There was no requirement to go through a polygraph test. When last week, just before the elections, he was told by the State Security Agency he must go through this process. As you know, there's a sort of long backstory to all of this. The ANC's been accused of pressurizing the SABC during elections in the past. ANC leaders were recorded in a meeting 2 weeks ago saying they were unhappy that journalists were criticizing the party. Yesterday, the presidency said Ramaphosa would never allow the harassment of journalists and that the State Security Agency carried out vetting on a regular basis. The executive director of the South African National Editors Forum is Reggie Molausi. Reggie, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to your listeners.
How do you feel about this, about how Moshesho Monare has been treated?
Unsettling. We are very unsettled, Stephen. We are very uneasy. It's worrying us We have noted what the presidency spokesperson, Mr. Magwenya, said yesterday, but nonetheless, we are unsettled by this. And we are not saying, we as journalists, we are not saying Mr. Monare as a news executive is beyond reproach. Obviously, he must also be vetted. His predecessor, Ms. Patiswa Machopeni, went through the same process. And we are saying it could have been done better. It could really have been done better, and the timing couldn't have been mostly unfortunate as well.
I mean, isn't this really the entire story is in the timing? If the State Security Agency had waited until after the election or done this 18 months ago, it probably wouldn't matter.
Exactly, Stephen. Exactly. And the SABC board is there, the minister is there. If Mr. Monare at the time was not cooperating, they could have raised this. But our uneasy and what we question is why now? We are a month away to the elections. Mr. Monare is an executive who's managing one of the biggest newsrooms we have in this country. And that newsroom is expected to carry out its mandate and do its job. And now the SSA comes at this time, at this point, to come up with all kinds of requests for him. And as we keep on repeating that, we know the prescripts of the law that the SABC fall under. Mr. Monare is not an ordinary journalist. He has to be subjected to this, as will the CEO, as would the head of legal. Yes, he would do that. But we are asking ourselves, why now? Why bring it now? Why couldn't you do this at the time he assumed his position? He's been in this position since 2022.
You say there is a need for vetting, and I know that it's in the law. I have to ask, I mean, Moshoeshoe Monare, yes, he's an executive. Yes, it's a senior position, perhaps the most important position in journalism in the country. But is there really a need for vetting? I don't know what vetting really achieves. And, I mean, it would help if there hadn't been this sort of history during the state capture era of what vetting was sometimes used for. But do you really think a journalist, even as one as senior as the head of news and current affairs at the SABC, needs to be vetted? And, I mean, can't vetting be abused as well? Isn't that the problem?
I think that's where we at, Stephen. That's exactly where we at with the SSA, and we can, discuss and disagree with Mr. Mangweni on this to say our take here is that vetting is being abused, and it's being abused against a very senior executive. And to answer your question, is it necessary? The government, the law says it's necessary. We all need to be vetted, particularly when you work for, a state-aligned institution such as the SABC. But then what the SSA and what Mr. Mangwenya doesn't, allude to is the same point that you're raising, that it gets abused. And it gets abused against, particularly if ever, we have heard of state security agents coming into offices, debugging them, asking about your history, asking about all kinds of things during this vetting process. And we say, Mr. Monare came into the SABC. He was interviewed by the then CEO. It could have been done at the time to say, if you want him to take a polygraph test or whatever not, why don't you do it at that time before his appointment, so that the SSA can satisfy itself to say, yes, he's a suitable candidate and he can go ahead and assume this mostly important role.
What action do you think needs to happen now? I mean, should the State Security Agency phone Monare and say, look, we'll do this after the elections? Should there be a statement from the SSA? Should maybe they do an interview and sort of clear up everything that's happening at the moment?
Well, we would expect them to do that. I think that would be the most logical thing to do. If they contact him and they say, look, let's talk after the elections, I think we would accept that. I don't think Mr. Monare has said he doesn't want to cooperate with them. He will cooperate with them, and we will support him. And we will say, look, you are in this role. It's a very important role. Can you cooperate with these guys? Let's give them what they want and do the test or whatever not. And he hasn't said he doesn't want to do it. He will do that. But can't we wait? Can't we do it after the elections? Can't we work on our timing to say he runs one of the most critical newsrooms we have in this country? And that newsroom, there's a lot of expectation out of it.
And Reggie, I mean, we're, still a month away now from the elections, and I get a sense that we're going to start seeing campaigning becoming a bit more intense. Do you worry that political parties are going to turn on journalists too? That actually for some journalists, particularly in some places, this could be a very difficult election to cover?
It could be. It could be. Hence, Stephen, we approached the IEC, yes, Sanef, and we said to the IEC, we worked with the IEC on, redrafting the code of conduct, the media code of conduct, and we pleaded with the IEC to say, please take this to political parties so that they can also know about the media code. They can know that as journalists, this is the work that we do. And at this time of the year, during campaigning, during voting, post the elections, we have a duty, we have a job to do. Can we respect one another and can we stick to this code? And we have always reiterated, Stephen, that we are not beyond reproach. We are not above the law, but politicians need to work with us. And we saw such criticism even with the last municipal elections, where particularly the SABC was targeted quite frequently.
Reggie Molosi, thank you, Executive Director at the SA National Editors Forum. Really appreciate the time. 17 minutes after 7.
In this week's episode of The Masked Singer South Africa, the mystery continues as we meet Ice Cream, Blue Crane, Cheetah, and Gold.
She's going to go down in the history as the most difficult mask to figure out.
Who will be the panel of detectives and superfan audience's favorite? And who will be unmasked? Don't miss The Masked Singer South Africa this Saturday at 6:30 p.m. on S3.
Are you blowing your paycheck on car insurance every month? Monica, 39 from Three Rivers, pays just 1,515 Rand a month for her 2018 BMW 320i.
None of the insurance companies has come near to the price I'm paying. I am happy at insurance. I'm going nowhere.
SMS out to 30754 now for a quick quote that could save you hundreds every month. You'll also find out about included benefits like panic assistance and help it out 24-hour roadside assistance. Yusuf, 45 from Tegadal, pays just 700 Rand a month for his 2021 VW Polo.
Help it out. Took the family up to go and see the snow and I got stuck. The service was quick, even though it was in a very remote area. Absolutely phenomenal service from our insurance.
SMS out to 30754 now. That's out to 30754. Outsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's, and limits apply. Premiums are risk profile dependent and reviewed annually. Client comments do not constitute financial advice.
The students from Fort Hare University have calculated that only a win will elevate them from the bottom half. Meanwhile, Thunderbirds ladies are in dire need of 3 points to escape from the basement. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Catch the queens of the beautiful game, the University of Fort Hare versus Thunderbirds ladies, on Wednesday 1 May at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
19 after 7, good morning. The Electoral Commission has now asked the police to expedite an investigation into a claim that the party Controversies forged hundreds of signatures on its election registration documents. A former member of the party told the City Press newspaper over the weekend he had been involved in forging the signatures and that it had been a widespread process. The EFF leader Julius Malema has also claimed that the party Bosa submitted fraudulent signatures. Bosa has challenged Malema to personally examine each of the 140,000 signatures it lodged in its registration documents. The Electoral Commission says when signatures are uploaded onto the portal, the system can verify that the names are people who are South African citizens who are alive. It cannot verify whether the signatures themselves are from the people they claim to be from. Professor William Gomedes, the founder and executive chair at the Democracy Works Foundation and a professor at the Wits School of Governance. I should remind you, he's also working with the multi-party charter movement grouping during these elections. Professor Gomedes, good morning.
Good morning. It's lovely speaking to you again.
So we have a former party member who claims MK forged signatures. We've seen other parties being accused of forging signatures too. And frankly, Professor, I hate to say this, I'm sure it's happened in the past. How seriously do we need to take this?
We have to take it absolutely seriously. An allegation has been made by a member of the MK, and I think it will have to be investigated because, really, there's a cloud. It's a credibility of a political party going into the elections. There has to be clarity around it before the election takes place.
Well, this is the nightmare, isn't it? It seems to me, I hope I'm wrong, but it may be unlikely that the police finish their investigation before the election. And what happens if you've got a whatever party in Parliament with seats, and it turns out that they committed fraud to get into the elections in the first place? In other words, we only get the results of the investigation after people have voted.
Two ways forward is, the one is that the IEC really puts pressure on the police to get it done as quickly as possible. The other way forward, which actually has happened in other countries, although with some problems, where, the party is allowed to continue, and the investigation continues, and then after the election, if they get seats, they get disqualified. There's one or two ways. So either get the investigation over, the party is eligible, or disqualify the party before the elections, or do it afterwards. Both, there are issues in both. They're kind of risk in both. Now, I think this is really part of a larger issue here. This was for the first time that our election gets very contested. In the past, everything was a little bit easy on the IEC in terms of, one party, obviously the ANC, it's always going to win. And I think, what we should have done, and this is now speaking after the time, and what the IEC should have done, is really tighten all of these things beforehand. But, obviously, there's context to it, is that, all of these things are, it's almost what the IC said, well, they depend on the parties to have credible processes, and also to be honest. It's almost like the same with a political party funding. The IC depends on the parties to be honest. So I think because our elections are now so competitive, the ISC and South Africans can't depend on
Professor Gomede, we seem to have just lost you there for a moment. I don't know if you are still with us. We'll see if we're able to get you on a different line just to continue that conversation, because it's a very complicated issue that we are talking about, and one that needs to be managed, I think, correctly. So we'll try and get Professor Gomede back on that line. Professor William Gomede, of course, is from Democracy Works and a professor at the Wits School of Governance. There you are, Professor. Sorry about that. You were talking about about how important honesty was, and I can see so much cynicism here. A party could say, so someone could come forward and say, I used to belong to party X. I submitted fraudulent signatures. And it turns out that that person did it deliberately because they wanted a party disqualified because they were working for another party. And similar things to that have happened in the past. So, we've got to be quite careful how we manage all of this.
No, absolutely. Because there's a credibility of the elections here at the stake. So, caution. At the same time, also, because this is in the public eye now, it's out in the public, there absolutely has to be an investigation. It can't be kicked for touch here. Sometimes, you're confronted by a reality, and then you have to deal with the reality. So the IEC will have to deal with this reality now. Investigate this and get it out as quickly as possible, even if they have to work 24 hours a day now, until there is some clarity around this.
If you look at the elections where we are now, Prof, we've got 31 days to go. It looks like the ANC's campaigning is coming in. The polls show that it's having an impact. It may increase its share of the vote. Some of the opposition parties, some of them may do very well. Some of them may lose a little bit. Some of the new parties that everyone's been talking about may sort of fade a little bit. Do you still think this election is going to be as big a change as everybody thought it was at the start of the year? Or could it sort of be a bit more, actually, much more similar to what we've seen before?
No, I do think there's going to be a change. A change means, even if the ANC is in a coalition in government, it gets below 50%. That's a change, and that will be a dramatic change. So I do think we will have a change. And I think also the society expects, one get a sense across society that people want change, even if it means, if coalition government, whatever kind of coalition government, it's going to be a change. So if the ANC gets below 50%, it is a dramatic change, even if it is still the majority party.
And the parties you're working with, I find it interesting as a journalist to speak to some of them, look at some of them. They're campaigning with each other and against each other. It must be fascinating for you to watch that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very interesting. It's South Africa's first pre-electoral coalition. The agreement's in such a way that they campaign for themselves and then also campaign together. Hasn't been done before, and it's something new, and it's, they kind of have to learn, on a day-to-day basis on the campaign trail. Now really why there is such a pre-electoral coalition, why they approach me to help them negotiate this, is that if they come to power, then they've already pre-agreed on how the government would look like, their economic policies. They've changed their manifestos actually to align with the agreement. They've pre-agreed the appointments, how they're going to appoint, how they're going to resolve conflicts. So there are always going to be conflicts, even on a campaign trail. That's the nature of these things. But they've pre-agreed on how they're going to deal with these and how quickly they're going to deal with these sort of issues.
Professor William Gumede, thank you. Founder, Executive Chair of the Democracy Works Foundation, and Professor at the Wits School of Governance, and also, as you know, the convener of the Multi-Party Charter Movement. 28 after 7.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. A sad farewell to the Rose of Soweto.
Yes, he'll be remembered as our champion who brought glory to South African boxing. So definitely a somber announcement. The boxing world saying goodbye to one of its champions, Dingaan Tombela, fondly known as the Rose of Soweto, passing away at the age of 57. The South African boxing legend Tombela was found deceased in his home after a period of illness. With a career spanning 16 years, Tombela was not just a boxer, but a beacon in the sport, securing the WBO lightweight title in the 90s and the WBC super middleweight title in 2000. And we'll remember his legacy as our thoughts are with his loved ones and the boxing community during this difficult time. Soccer action saw Peter Shalulile scoring twice as Mamelodi Sundowns beat TS Galaxy 3-0, and they needed just 3 points from 7 matches to clinch a 7th straight South African Premiership title. And they can do that when they play Kaizer Chiefs should they win come Thursday. Moving on to other soccer news, former international Finidi George has been announced as the new head coach of Nigeria, succeeding Jose Peseiro. The 53-year-old was placed in interim charge of the Super Eagles after the departure of Portuguese following Nigeria's defeat by Ivory Coast in the 2023 Africa Cup of Nations final, and that was in February. Now, the Springbok women's head coach Louis Kuhn has named a strong squad of 28 players. Now, there's the inclusion of some stalwarts as well as 16 forwards and 12 backs. And this is for their boost to return undefeated, and with the Rugby World Cup qualification secured, the Springbok ladies are looking for the title as champions of Africa. Here's Springbok women's head coach Louis Kuhn.
Yeah, thank you. We are blessed to have some more experienced girls back for this campaign. Sizo, Lusanda and Omawetu, they are more experienced Springboks that have been to World Cups, and they returned from injury, so we're very thankful for them being back in the squad. They will really bring some very much needed experience to our group. And then also Snare from the Free State are possibly going to make a debut for the 15s team. She's been a Springbok Sevens player.
And finally, men's rugby, Siviwe Soyezwapi says he's pleased to return to the Springbok Sevens team for the first time this season and is looking forward to the Blitzbox contest this weekend. And that's in the HSBC Sevens tournament in Singapore. The Blitzbox finished 6th at the Hong Kong Sevens, and Soyezwapi admitting it has not been an easy run for the team.
It was really tough to go through that. No, we pride ourselves with high standards, and that's who we are. That's what we stand for. And coming 5th, 7th, and even 12th, it's just not the results that we have come to become accustomed to. And it was really tough, but I know that no one went out there to lose, and we just had to go through the period and the phase that we went through. And I mean, it's a building process, so we continue just striving and taking it a day at a time.
We'll have more sport on Sunrise, top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. Good morning. We'll talk a little bit more about women and politics in the next half hour. You're there, SFM, leading the conversation at 7:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, bad news for motorists is that the price of petrol is set to increase by around 37 cents a litre from midnight tonight. The Department of Energy says the price of diesel will decrease by up to 36 cents per litre, and illuminating paraffin will go down by 25 cents a litre at the retail level. Police Minister Bheki Cele and the National Police Commissioner General Fani Masimula are today expected to host an imbizo to address crime in the Inanda, Ntuzuma and Kwamashu policing precincts. And the DA leader John Steenhuisen has warned that abuse of the state security apparatus to threaten the media will destroy South Africa's hard-earned democracy. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Been a crash in the Midrand area this morning, Allendale Road and the K101 junction, and everything, all approaches backed up into that. All 4 approaches, Pretoria Main, K101 and Allendale both ways. Super heavy backlogs and a way to get through that scene. Also, Pretoria East is a collision on Solomon Mhlanga at Old Farm Road. So from Linwood Road, taking Solomon Mhlanga going west is quite a backlog. And Paul Kruger this morning, heavy again into the CBD area. Traffic queuing up from Capital Park, routing down towards sort of Blood Street territory. That Paul Kruger's route is just getting busier by the day coming to Pretoria. Earlier crash on the N3 North at Linksfield. Basically, all lanes are open. It remains heavy coming up from Germiston on the N3, and the N12 and R24 routes in from the Ekurhuleni side remain heavy into Galilees as well. Durban, some protesting near VN Mike School on Inanda Road. Possible diversions likely around there. Some burning tyres this morning. N2 North pretty heavily backed from the M7 moving through the roadworks at Spaghetti Junction. The Richmond Road's got traffic all over it from Marion Hill all the way through to the N3 Highway. If you're on your way to Pinetown, it's a super slow run through. Cape Town, crash on the N2 inbound between the Jansmans Drive and Rapenburg Road. So traffic on the N2 into town stays pretty heavily backed from Robert Sobukwe. The crash on the N2 inbound at Khayelitsha is being cleared, but there's just another backlog moving through that Spine Road exit as you come into Khayelitsha. And the N7 both ways queuing up towards the Bosmansdam Road exit at Summer Greens. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
Intel Lenglet Chela, good morning. How are the markets looking?
Well, let's kick things off in Asia. Those markets trading mostly in positive territory. China's Shanghai index, the only one in the red, losing 0.25%. And this despite an improvement in China's factory activity. The recent PMI data for the region shows that activity in the manufacturing sector remains in expansion territory. Now, in the US, futures are pretty mixed, with investors eyeing the Fed's next move as policymakers gather for a 2-day meeting starting tomorrow. The JSE, in the meantime, trading in the green with the all share up 1.4%. Moving into the currency scene, the rand has remained strong on a high on the back of a softer dollar. The local unit currently sitting at 18.69 to the dollar.
And then the petrol price is going to be increased tonight, and always bad news.
Yeah, so motorists are set to feel more pain at the pumps. Now, this applies solely to the petrol users. That's as petrol prices will be raised by midnight, as you said. Motorists can expect to pay 37 cents more for fuel. Once the hike is implemented, Stephen, petrol will cost you about 25 Rand 49 cents a litre In Gauteng, while on the coast it will cost 24 rand 70 cents. These are levels last seen in October 2023. Diesel users in the meantime can breathe a sigh of relief as those prices decrease, falling up to 36 cents, with the wholesale price sitting at 22 rand 15 in Gauteng. Now, the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy said the prices were affected by the higher oil price and the weaker rand during the period under review. It's also pointed to growing geopolitical tensions in the Middle East and sustained production cuts by OPEC plus countries as some of the main contributing factors to the increase.
And then Libstar's looking to the rest of Africa and the Middle East for export growth.
Yes, Stephen, it's definitely eyeing growth in markets outside of South Africa. The food group is looking to expand its export markets in the rest of Africa and the Middle East, including the UAE and Saudi Arabia. The move comes as Libstar looks for ways to shoulder the tough economic environment back at home. It expects conditions here at home to remain the same quite some time as it deals with intensified competition, which is expected to further weigh on the company's profits moving forward. So Libstar is pegging its hopes on its halal certified facilities where its perishable goods are produced, as it believes that such goods are in demand in that region.
Intaleng Lechela, thank you very much indeed. And Intaleng, of course, back with us tomorrow. More business news through the day here on SAFM. 23 minutes now to 8.
At SAFM Radio and at Stephen Grootes on Twitter.
All right, well, all sorts of views coming through this morning. You know the number, 086 000 2032. Voice notes coming through as well on 0614 104 107.
Steve Shonya from Centurion. The problem is Dacha dope remains in your system for 28 days. So you cannot be intoxicated 5 days after smoking the joint, but it's going to test. Anyway, that was fantastic morning.
Sean, thanks. Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, I'm no expert on all of this, but there is, something. I think we haven't seen the last case on this. Other voice notes?
Good morning, Stephen. It's Oliver here from KZN. Norman, if I may ask here, can the ISC just tell us what was the reason for them to meet the USA ambassador? Can you just tell us that? Why are they meeting with the ambassador from the United States of America? Thank you very much.
All right, interesting. Yeah, look, I think there's lots of sort of diplomatic activity around elections. Elvis and Ermelo, hi. The issue of Dacha cannabis, go for it.
Hello, Civic.
Morning, Elvis, go for it.
I'm all right. Yes, I heard you talking about ganja there. I wanted to ask the professor there that I'm a smoker, I'm a truck driver. I smoke every day.
Mm-hmm.
So, what is the problem? If my employer can find out, can he fire me?
Geez, Elvis, I don't know. It would be in your employment contract, and it would depend on, when you smoke and when you drive, I think.
Yeah, I don't see any problem. I smoke every day, and I've never had any accident. Nothing. I've been driving for a very long time.
Yeah. And
so I don't think the ganja is the problem.
Do you sleep between smoking and driving?
No, I don't.
It is illegal, as far as I know, to smoke and drive. In other words, to be intoxicated is the law. So if you were high while you were driving, that would be illegal.
No, but I don't understand. I don't understand because I feel good. I feel energized when I smoke. Yeah, I feel energized and I can go a longer distance.
Yeah, Elvis, you're talking about smoking Dacha, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Elvis, you really mustn't do that. My advice has to be that you mustn't. It's illegal, and I think that the police and everyone would think that that's dangerous. So, will you please stop doing that?
Yeah, Stephen, but I use it for medicine purposes. You see, I'm not just using it for fun. I'm using it for medicine purposes. As the government said that you can use it for medical.
Yeah,
for medicine,
but you can't drive a truck while intoxicated, Elvis. You can't drive a truck while high.
But I've been doing that for long, Stephen. I can't just now. I've been doing that for a long time.
I'm sorry
if I think I can drive without smoking now, I don't think my employer will like it because I'll be lazy. I won't do those details that I'm doing.
Yeah. Elvis, the simple fact is it's illegal and dangerous, so you have to stop doing it.
Yeah, but I know what I'm saying, Stephen. I think the government must be clear on us smokers, you see. They mustn't just put a law and not put everything in front of that law, you see, because now they allow us to smoke, but when the employer finds out smoking, they fire us. So
But Elvis, you're not allowed to drink and drive your truck. You wouldn't be allowed to drink alcohol and drive your truck. It's exactly the same with Dacha.
Okay, I hear you, but still, man, I don't agree. So it was better if there was a professor there, you see. So, but
Well, I think they would say exactly the same thing. You cannot drive a truck while high.
All right, Stevie, thanks, man.
All right. Thank you, Elvis. Look, I mean, really, I'm just going to urge you again while you're still on the line there. You are off air, though, to say that really you can't do that. I mean, geesh, really you can't. Maxwell in Swane, hi. The police minister, Bekele, he was in Mpumalanga yesterday.
Good morning, Stephen. Yes, he was in Kanyamazana, that area next to Wopinar, Stevens.
Yeah.
And when you check the statistics in Mpumalanga, to be exact, there is this area called Mkuhlu, Calcutta Police Station. You can check even now, Stephen Grootes. It's one of the highest when it comes to the criminal activities that is happening in that area. So for me, I strongly believe that he should have started there, where the statistics are telling him what is happening. But playing a devil advocate, I know why he went there, because remember, Mandla Msibi is suspended. Mandla Msibi is rogue, is controlling another. Exactly. Yeah. I think for him to be going there was the sign to Mandla Msibi that we are watching you. Whatever happens in this region, you will be involved. So it is very interesting in that respect. My other issue, Stevens, that I'm asking you look at, why the price of petrol is always high, and they are telling us that there is that situation in Middle East, but the diesel is going low. What is happening in that sense?
I don't know how it happened this time.
It works.
Yeah. So Maxwell, I thought I understood it, but this has happened before where one's gone up and one's gone down, but it doesn't happen that often. Maxwell, thank you. There are differences in different types of oil that are used. I do know that. To Benson in Cape Town. Benson, hi. School children and crossing the road, Benson.
Yes, my brother. There is I'm so shocked here, really.
Yeah.
Almost three accidents for these children. The problem is, I think, if you guys maybe can send a letter to the Minister of Transport to educate the people which are driving the school children. And just now we are not even 10 minutes.
Yeah.
In Cape Town, by the parents.
Sure.
A lot of buses. They Avanza drop off the children, and the children they were rushing for the next bus so that they can take the bus, and they just crossing in front of the buses, and they're right in front of me, lucky a break. Besides that, just here also District 6, the same one, the same day. So these people driving the children, they are always in a rush, dumping the children. They don't even help the children to cross the road. So what is that really? What is that?
No, Benson, I look at people crossing the road, I look at young kids crossing the road, and so often I go, whoa, I do think we need to take more care on that. All right, Benson in Cape Town, thank you. Just a reminder, please, if you're on the road, I know school's probably opening in about 45 seconds, most of them. But something we need to look at very carefully. I think a bit more education too as well on that.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
We were talking about 20 minutes ago about this issue of signatures in the Electoral Commission, and can the police find out if people form signatures or not. And Mbali and Tuli's phoned in. She's actually the founder of the Groundwork Collective. And Mbali, hi, good morning.
Morning, Stephen. How are you doing?
I'm well, thanks. Look, do we blame the IEC for what's happened here? I mean, are they able to verify signatures?
No, we can't blame the IEC because this is a very poorly worded piece of legislation that came from Parliament. And the IEC had said at the time that they wouldn't be able to verify whether the signatures were of that particular person because, frankly, it's not part of their mandate. So this was actually done in conjunction with when they decided that independent candidates should have a certain number of signatures. And so the politicians and the parties in Parliament at the time then decided that, new political parties should do the same and didn't give any thought to how this would happen. And so we've got this poorly worded legislation. It's full of loopholes, not just this one. And I suspect that it's going to have to be taken back unless there's going to be a way to verify it. And if you just think about it, at the beginning of the election season, there were 115 parties that were trying to get on the ballot. If the IEC had to verify all of their signatures, say 60,000 if they wanted to contest all three ballots, that would have been 6.9 million signatures. It was never going to be possible.
I mean, it shows in a way what happens when you have a system that hasn't been properly thought through, and when you make a change to the system, not everything is thought through, and that's kind of what's happened here.
It is. It was done in haste. This alarm bell was rang by many civil society organizations. The IEC themselves were given this. And so the IEC is now also in a position where it has to rely on SABC having the ability to verify. And then we must decide how many signatures do we decide in terms of a sample size makes a party, disqualified. Because if one person says they forgot that they signed it, maybe that's just, normal. If 15 people out of 30 people say it, then maybe that's alarm bells. Where do we draw the threshold? Where do we draw the lines? Because having been a politician, I can tell you that there are people that you might canvass, you might talk to them, you might get them to sign forms or petitions. But if you ask that person in a couple of months, they might not remember that. And so there's all kinds of ways that people can argue both for and against the disqualification of a party, even to the point that you made, that a disgruntled former member might say that, or even if they weren't sanctioned by the party, that they did kitchen canvassing. And it's not that hard. You get databases. You just make sure that there are people that are registered, and you can do that by cross-referencing with the voters' roll, and then forward to signatures if you have to.
Mbali, it's interesting watching this election. The numbers released yesterday that there are actually 3 million more women expected to vote this year. And I've made the point many times that when we talk politics on the radio, it's really only men that phone in. Do you think anything's shifting in our society? Is it getting better for women?
I think women have historically always been more registered and more of the voters in our society. But given the bias that society has against both female leaders and women taking leadership positions even in the home, I think we still have a long way to go because we don't see that reflected in the policies or even in the behavior of political parties. And so I think much of the same is going to continue in that regard. And it's unclear to me why we still have this problem, because quite a few studies show that where women are in charge, where women leaders work together, they are more likely to work across the political divides and get things done far quicker than their male counterparts. And still, women have to cross this imaginary barrier of this bias against what it is to be a female leader. We also know that in terms of the politics of a household, women are often, the first people to be early adopters of new political parties and to bring them into the household, which is why if political parties are smart, they would actually target women far more. But I mean, sometimes the loudest voices are also the ones that are considered to be the best. And in this case, men are far more, I think, willing to talk about and have opinions. And I listen to your show every morning, and you're right, it's mostly men. But like myself now, I'm outside my daughter's school, so, I'm also busy.
Mbali Ntuli, thank you, CEO and founder of the Groundwork Collective. We're listening to that is Advocate Brenda Madumise, Director at Wise for Africa. Brenda, good morning. I mean, this is such an important issue. Do you see, we have more female voters and more male candidates. Are we making any more progress? Are we finding there's a higher percentage of female candidates than there used to be?
No, not really. I think what is forcing political parties to have gender representation is precisely because some of them decide to have their own quotas in their parties. In other instances, it was because we had, as a country, we demanded that there should be more representation and that women should be more represented. But I think we've been regressing over the years. And is what you see with more women being registered voters, 14-point-something million in this election of 27 million registered voters, 14 million of those are women. And it tells you a story. Couple of things. One, when you have in a society where women are the majority, and it's a given. We don't even have to debate that. And they have demonstrated over the years taking their civic responsibility to heart and being active in changing their lives, whether it's through the ballot or it's through being engaged at the community level, being engaged in their children's lives and school and all of that. So you have them as responsible, and they run the households in many instances. However, because of how the political system is structured, right? A political system that does not take into account how women interact with the political space and the responsibility given to women to tend to family matters. We design a political system that in itself is exclusionary, right? Because I have to behave and make myself available at times that might not be suitable for me as a parent, as a mother, but as an individual who wants to be involved in other things, right? So men are able to engage with this political system because there's someone else who's taking care of the other things that they should not be they're not taking care of, right? So the political system that we have, it's very masculine. It's in its orientation, in its posture, right? And we then want women to be assimilated into that system, and we want to accommodate women instead of looking at it broadly and saying, is it working for everybody else? And that's why it will continue to have more men than women in the political system, and the things won't change. But women are the biggest players in ensuring that this political system continues to stay. And maybe at some point we need to reflect on how this vote that we have, and that powerful vote that we have, keeps on perpetuating subjugation and discrimination.
There has been, in my memory, one party that was formed particularly around women called Women Forward, and they got a very small number of votes in the 2019 election. My point is that women don't organize as women, do they? If they did, that would change everything, but that's not how politics works.
Absolutely, it doesn't. So you can't have a singular. So you can't say I'm setting up a women's party, and I think that's why we continue to fail in everything that we do, because we tend to separate women's issues from the rest of everything else. And if you look at the manifestos of the key political parties, and I'm going to relate to gender-based violence, is that the ANC in its manifesto mentions gender-based violence. And all that it says about gender-based violence in its manifesto is that they are going to implement the National Strategic Plan on GBV. This is a party that has been seized with this work for the last 20 years, and it has been in the forefront of ensuring that we have a strategic plan. However, all that you say to us as possible voters is that I'm going to implement that strategic plan. Why haven't you implemented it in the last 2 years, 3 years? Why haven't you done it? That is going to be different now in 2020 on the 29th of May. So it's really a matter of how parties and all of us really analyze and have a gender lens in everything that we do. So I would have wanted to see in all these manifestos how, when you talk about the economy, when you talk about unemployment, when you talk about land, how does that interact with the daily lives of women to ensure that it is not burdensome, that you're going to take care work is going to be uppermost in your approach and your implementation, and so that then you draw it back to power and control. And why is it that we have the highest numbers of gendered violence in this country? So you're not seeing that at all. So it keeps on being in isolation. And that's why having a women's party will not address that, because you're not going to be appealing to every broader member of society, because you want everybody to have the same understanding and same approach on why it's important to embrace all the genders in your community and in society.
Brenda Madomise, thank you, Director at WISE for Africa. I really appreciate it. 8:05.
Join us on Afternoon Express Tuesday at 6 p.m. on S3 as we celebrate Workers' Day. Tatu Mambalani shares how to assert yourself at work without being arrogant, and Amy Kleinhans lets us in on how to beat a bad day at the office. And we're making peanut butter balls for that 3 p.m. brain fog. That's Afternoon Express Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Repeat Sundays at 8:30 a.m. only on S3.
Be part of the 17th Annual SA Sport Awards under the theme Celebrating 30 Years of Freedom Through Sporting Excellence, with great prizes to be won every week. All you have to do is SMS A, B, C, D, or E to 32020 to vote for your favorite People's Choice Nominee of the Year. SMS is charged at R1.50. Free SMSs do not apply. The nominees are A. Eben Etzebeth, B. Gardestein, C. Siamtanda Siya Kolisi, D. Pesitau, E. Kirsten Neuschafer. SMS A, B, C, D, or E to 32020. Voting line closes at 9 p.m. on the 5th of May 2024. T's and C's apply. For more information, visit dsac.gov.za. Catch the SA Sport Awards on Sunday, 5th of May on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC 1 at 8 p.m. Proudly brought to you by the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture. SABC Sport is the official broadcaster of the SA Sport Awards. Hashtag #IsInJazaGame. Hashtag SASA 17th edition.
SAFM. Prime time all day long.
4 minutes to 8. Good morning. The National Youth Development Agency is hosting what they call an intergenerational dialogue on democracy and development. They say it'll bring together people from different parts of our country. The Executive Deputy Chair of the NYDA is Korabo Mohale. Ms. Mohale, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Good morning, and thank you so much for having us, and good morning to your listeners.
What are you actually doing with this? What are you aiming to do with this dialogue?
As you would know that South Africa this year celebrates 30 years of democracy. So it's important for us to deliver the message of the president that he delivered on the 27th of April to the young people of South Africa, but also for young people to engage in some of the highlighted, key priority areas from the president. And this dialogue really is going to be bringing government leaders of multilateral institutions, as well as young people, to the reflection of the past 30 years, but also to say where to from here and how do we ensure that we build a country, a continent that is inclusive and prioritizes the development of young people.
What do you think? I mean, people are going to bring up some of the major problems we have at the moment. I mean, for young people now, I think it's harder to get a job than it was when I was a young person. I think people feel, many of them, I can't speak for them, but I think people tell me they feel betrayed by the education system. They feel there's no opportunity. I think sometimes, actually, younger people might blame older people for that, and I can't blame them.
Well, I'm a young person myself, so I don't want to say I'll be joining the choir, but I think this is an opportunity for us as young people to be able to ensure that we provide tangible solutions that we believe that the more older generation can be able to use to ensure that our systems are a bit more effective. I mean, when you reflect on the education system, one of the major issues that young people always lament about is what we call an obsolete education system, in that, when young people look for jobs afterwards, they become unemployable because the education system doesn't rapidly respond to the needs of the economy. Now, we are saying to young people those issues are valid, but you cannot raise them just on social media. Come to these platforms and say to leaders of government in these critical spaces and say, these are our interventions, these are the changes that we believe we can be able to make to ensure that we build a more inclusive economic system. But also, you've got a proliferation of certain skills, and we would encourage that young people, especially those that are going into institutions of higher learning, they go to the DHEAD website and look into what they call skills in high demand, so that when we do study, when we do get particular skills, we're able to respond to the immediate needs of the economy.
I don't know, Karabo. I think a lot of people, frankly, don't trust government. And if you look at the way that government has treated them, it's hard to blame them.
Well, I don't know.
aren't we the government, right? I mean, so when
you are, not me.
When we are sitting, no, you're part of the government. And by saying you're part of the government, we're saying the government is for the people, by the people, and we all have a responsibility to hold those that are in the echelons of power to account. This is a platform for young people to say to the National Youth Development Agency, we believe you are ineffective or you are effective. We believe you can be able to add more funds in this area and reduce funds in this area. It helps us to shape our priority areas. If there is no room for conversation, then we'll always have this, no, but there's government, then there's us. We believe that the government of South Africa, the government of the African continent should be driven by our priority areas. We should be able to show the leaders what the vision of South Africa and the African continent should be.
Karabo Mohale, thank you. Executive Deputy Chair of the National Youth Development Agency. You with SFM leading the conversation, 8 o'clock.
In our top stories, petrol prices set to increase again, and Steenhuisen warns misuse of state security threatens democracy. Good morning. Bad news for motorists is that the price of petrol is set to increase by around 37 cents a litre from midnight tonight. The Department of Energy says the price of diesel will decrease by up to 36 cents per litre, and illuminating paraffin will go down by 25 cents a litre at the retail level. The price of LP gas will decrease by 46 cents per kilogram. The Department of Energy spokesperson Robert Marquez says the increases are due to international factors.
These prices were affected by the higher oil prices and weaker rand during the period under review. The petrol prices are increasing mainly due to higher demand for driving season in the Northern Hemisphere. The slate levy remains unchanged at 21.92 cents a litre on both petrol and diesel. We have also observed that the shipping costs were lower during the period under review compared to the previous period.
Police Minister Bheki Cele and the National Police Commissioner General Fani Masimula are today expected to host an imbizo to address crime in the Inanda, Ntuzuma and Kwamashu policing precincts. According to crime figures released by Cele in February, the Inanda police station is among the top 5 police stations with the most reported murders between October and December last year. Police spokesperson Leranzo Temba.
We'll see the police management interact with residents from Kwamashu, Ntuzuma and Inanda. The crime prevention imbizo forms part of ongoing efforts by the SAPS to engage residents on crime concerns and improve law enforcement service delivery.
The Senzo Mehiwa murder trial will resume this morning following an early adjournment yesterday at the High Court in Pretoria. This was to afford the defence time to be furnished with more documents pertaining to cell phone evidence of some of the accused. 5 men are on trial for the murder of Mehiwa, who was shot dead in 2014. Cell phone data analyst Gideon Gous is expected to be cross-examined by the defence. All the accused have been in custody since the arrest after numerous attempts to apply for bail were unsuccessful. In election-related news, the DA leader John Steenhuisen has warned that abuse of the state security apparatus to threaten the media will destroy South Africa's hard-earned democracy. Steenhuisen's remarks come after weekend reports that the state security wanted to do a polygraph test on the group executive for news at the SABC Moshoeshoe Monare just weeks before the general elections. Steenhuisen led a march against corruption and fraud in Klerksdorp in the northwest.
Now they're using the state security agency as a tool to intimidate the media and to intimidate the opposition. Just 2 weeks after Ramaphosa in that leaked recording was heard saying, we're going to deal with people who report negatively on his government. Goodness me, the media is not reporting negatively. They're showing South Africa what it looks like on the ground. And that's the job of a media. It will destroy our democracy if our media are put under threat.
Meanwhile, the presidency has denied reports that Monare is being targeted ahead of the national elections. Presidency spokesperson Vincent Magwenya says Monare never completed his vetting process when he joined the SABC.
Upon his appointment, Mr. Monare gave consent to the vetting process and completed the form that was furnished to him, and went further to submit some, but not all, of the information that was required. The process was then stalled when Mr. Monare did not want to submit himself to a polygraph test, which is part of the vetting process.
Columbia University in New York has begun suspending students who failed to dismantle a long-running pro-Palestinian campus protest. Several hundred demonstrators have defied an ultimatum to disperse, saying they will not move until their demands for the college to divert from Israel are met. The student was among them.
We've all been kind of expecting something like this to happen for a while. This is not any new news. A lot of people have been feeling very insecure because of a number of deadlines. It's finals week. Everyone is still working on their finals. But at the end of the day, school is temporary. We're all here as intelligent people who have, autonomy, and we have a lot of privilege in being able to stand up and do what we love and protect the people and communities that we think deserve protection and that are deserving of our time.
Recapping the top story, bad news for motorists is that the price of petrol is set to increase by around 37 cents a litre from midnight tonight. For SFM News, I am Anne Musa.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM Sports Headlines, soccer, Mamelodi Sundowns, they are just one win away from clinching a record-extending 7th successive league title. And in tennis, Rafa Nadal keeps his clay court dreams alive. We'll bring you the details just before 8:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Just looking at some delays, sitting up in Midrand, the N1 north towards the Allendale Road exit, slightly slow, and that's just having an impact on the top of the N1, top of the N3 as you get through Buccleuch and turn into the Midrand area. Pedestrian crash on Solomon Mshlangu in Pretoria East. It's just down by Old Farm Olympus Drive Junction. Quite heavy from Linwood Road moving west in towards that scene along Solomon Mshlangu. Durban's N2 is heavy now from Queen Nandi Drive up through to the roadworks around Gateway. Looks like something has crashed or broken down in that roadwork area if you're on your way to the airport. In fact, that's the second queue you'll work through. It's a big backlog from the M7 through Spaghetti Junction and then from Queen Nandi Drive up towards Gateway. Big secondary queue to get through there. Cape Town this morning, M3 is fairly busy from around about top of Wynberg Hill all the way through to Hospital Bend. The N1 into town, queuing quite heavily to Kuberg Interchange and then more delays through Marine Drive up over the elevated freeway area. And if you're moving between Cock Bay and Fishhook, the main road remains quite heavy, particularly on the southbound side into the Clovelly Junction. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
8 minutes after 8, good morning. You're with SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. All sorts of conversations that you've heard this morning. We've been talking about using dagga in the workplace. A little worried about the truck drivers smoking dagga, but we'll sort of keep an eye on that if we can. We've had conversations too around prepaid meters and some sort of surcharge on prepaid meters because people haven't paid their rates. And the council, we had an accusation from Sapiwa that the council was taking money. We'll see if we can look into that. More as well, you heard about the Gauteng Health Department and the cancer treatment, and then, of course, this issue of signatures and the elections process. You know the number 086 000 2032. We'll talk about the devolution of police powers in about half an hour, 20 minutes from now. Who should manage the police? Should it be national government? Should it be the local council? How should it be done? We'll have a conversation around that. Good morning, 9 after 8.
Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
Yesterday, you heard the president of the Police and Prison Civil Rights Union, Tulani Ngwenya, on your radio. He was very frustrated at the poor buildings, that the poor quality of the building that his members, police officers, had to work in, and particularly Telkom Towers, and the police minister himself, Becky Cele, had said that the situation got so bad that he actually had been working from home for the last year. Now, in the end, the building was closed by the Labour Department. It's not the only building in this position, by the way, in this state. Well, yesterday, a pop crew were on the radio. The Department of Public Works and Infrastructure got hold of him and asked for a right of reply. Their spokesperson is Lennox Mabaso. Lennox, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to the listeners of SFA.
You heard the complaint from the union there, and I think many people know that government buildings are often in very bad shape. What's your response to that? It is your job to conduct the maintenance on these buildings.
Yes, Stephen, we will be engaging with POPCO to take them through the process that we are doing to turn around the state assets. But we wish to indicate that as POPCO as requested, the issue of the telecom towers, which was procured in its pristine state in 2016, is currently a subject of forensic investigation, which Minister Sihle Zikalala has launched to establish why, when the building was procured in 2016, there was no occupation of the building, leading to the deterioration that the POPCO has alluded to yesterday. But what is important, Stephen, is that there is a new approach and a new turnaround that Minister Sihle Zikalala has brought to the department around the management of state assets. There is a new optimization strategy of government buildings, which has been approved by Cabinet in March. What will happen in terms of that is that there is a focus on refurbishing, operating, and the maintenance of state assets. It has started, for instance, with the appointment for the first time in the history of the department after such a long time, with an appointment of the head of property management, whose focus is to ensure that there is a turnaround in these buildings and that government departments are able to render services in buildings that are fit for the purpose and that are habitable and that ensures that there's efficiency in the delivery of services to the citizens.
Okay, the Telkom Towers building, so people aren't allowed to work in it because the Labour Department closed it, right? This happened, I think, now 2 months ago.
Yes, but what's important is that under this optimization strategy of assets of government, which the head of PMTE, Mr. Cesar Sibande, is currently leading, we are doing work now to refurbish the building. But as we do that, there is a forensic investigation to establish.
Okay,
The building was purchased in a very pristine condition, habitable in 2016. It was not occupied for a long time. So the forensic investigation that Minister Zikalala has launched is to establish why did no one occupy the building when the building was in such a good condition, and who was responsible, and management can be affected on that person.
I'm coming to that. Since the building was closed by the Labour Department, what changes have been made to the building? What work have you done on it?
There is work currently, Stephen, that is being done to refurbish the building, to attend to some areas of the deterioration, but also under this strategy of asset optimization that I indicated that the new head of property management.
Okay, Lennox, I'm sorry. Let's just cut the jargon if you don't mind. And I'm sorry, you and I have spoken many times. I'm sorry to be so rude to you, but can we just? You say work's being done on it. Okay, can you give us a timeline? When will police officers be able to go and work in the building? How long is this going to take, is my point.
Well, in terms of the current plan is to ensure that within a period of 1 year, the problems are resolved. But in the interim, there is a facility that has been identified for the use by those personnel of the SAPS that were operating in that building, where they can operate and continue to render services. But there is a timeline to ensure that within a year, the building is attended to. And in this optimization strategy, there's an involvement of the private sector who's also coming in and working with government to ensure that we attend to all the challenges, not only with this property, but with many other state properties.
Okay. I'm coming to other properties in a minute. You say there's now going to be a forensic investigation. We've seen forensic investigations in government before, Lennox, and frankly, they can take 18 months to 2 years before you get the name of someone who left the department 5 years ago. Let me put it to you like this. It would seem to me that all you need to do is get probably 2 or 3 of the top officials in the police service and 2 or 3 of the top officials in your department in the same room, press the record button and say, why didn't the police move in? Do you really need a full-scale forensic investigation that's going to take years and then nothing's going to happen? We all know. We've all seen this movie before, I'm afraid.
Well, you know that this property was procured in 2016, and if you calculate the time lag there, a lot of changes has happened. There's been a lot of reconfigurations, a lot of changes, some people that were there. So hence you need to establish the full details in terms of what happened. So you acquired building in a pristine state now in 2016, and in 2024 you are dealing with this challenge. So look, we can only, because as you'll be aware, Minister Zigala is just finished a year in office, but we can only deal with the challenges as they arise. So it's very important to get to the bottom of what happened, what are the causal factors. But as we are doing that, you are also fixing the problem. We are not sitting and saying, no, I'm doing the forensic only, but you are also fixing the problem. Hence, I'm indicating to you that the two-pronged approach is to establish so that there can be consequence management from those responsible causing the government this problem. And eventually, there's also an effort to make sure that you turn around the state assets so that the people that are supposed to render services from those assets are able to continue to deliver services to the citizens of South Africa.
Okay. I mean, I think almost everyone knows if you go to a government building, you are going to find a very difficult situation. I mean, the SA Air Force building had to be closed. The air conditioners don't work. People are going in 2-hour shifts with face masks and working in 39 degrees Celsius. All of these took a long time to happen, and no one did anything. That's the point, is that, it took the Labour Department, and really under a lot of pressure, because the Labour Department, I think, maybe didn't want to do this. Maybe. My point is that these things happen in real time, and no one did anything. We still don't have a parliament, by the way, which is also, on your department. I mean, does Public Works actually do anything? And I'm sorry to be so blunt.
Well, one thing, Stephen, I think one of the things that we have not done is to really come and show to you guys and speak to you guys about the work that you are doing. In South Africa today, you can go to any office of government. You can go to do any service of the state that you require from the state. You'll get that service because over 88,000 buildings we are managing in the country, and they are working. When you say South Africa works because of Public Works, it is because we despite the fact that there are few that have got challenges, but many of them are working. And even those that where there are challenges, we are able to do them. It's just that our problems at times are exaggerated. But it's important that to say,
how can you exaggerate a building when the police minister works from home? When you've got working temperatures of 39 degrees Celsius in the Air Force building, that's hardly an exaggeration.
What I'm saying, Stephen, is that I'm saying the challenges in those buildings that are a problem, we are dealing with them. We are there. We are active. We are working. But I'm also indicating that there are many other buildings, thousands of them, where services of government are rendered and they are managed by Public Works, and we are able to attend to them. It's like saying when SARS is under collecting in a couple of years. Then you say there's a big problem. But there are years when SARS is doing well, like it's currently doing well. So it's the same thing here, where you will have a challenge in some areas, but you have got many other areas where we are making a success. But the most important thing is to ensure that, hence we have this optimization strategy. All government properties must be fit for people to work. Citizens and customers must be able to get services from those facilities, and that's what our new optimization strategy is dealing with. And there is a dedicated focus and a huge turnaround. Hence, I'm indicating to you the processes that have been taken, including the strategy that has been brought before cabinet, to make sure that we optimize the usage of state property and also bring in private sector to work with us under the refurbish, operate and maintain program.
Lennox Mabaso, thank you, spokesperson for the Department of Public Works. How do you feel about government buildings that you go into? Do you feel safe? Are they properly refurbished? Are they working optimally? 086 000 2032.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Tabiso on the line from Polokwane. Tabiso, hi, good morning. You've been on hold for ages. Moshweshwe Monare and this issue of vetting.
Yeah, if you Stephen, the major problem that I think we move from is that we live in an environment wherein there is a serious trust deficiency. In this sense. And I'm saying this sense is on the basis that we all know that there was a commission, you remember the CP Mufumadi and others.
Oh, yes, into the State Security Agency, yeah.
We're able to look into matters of SARS. And I don't believe that those issues will repeat themselves again. We all know what had happened, and we've all read the report and all of that. You see, Stephen, it would have been ideal from which I'm sitting. Unfortunately, is that we're going to elections, and everything it will be elevated by many other people, including oppositions, to say this is what they said. It would have been ideal so that someone, particularly from state security, comes and explains the processes, apart from the spokesperson of the president, to say you firstly would have to This is what you do. You submit all the forms. In case you fail vetting, you still have to do the process that Moshwete has to go under. But I think the other technicality is that there's a thin line between, working for being a journalist like Mondli Makanyo, City President-in-Chief, and Moshasha Munaro, who works in the SABC, which SABC happens to be a public broadcaster, and it is one of the states.
Okay, so you're saying there is a case for vetting in your view?
There is definitely a case for vetting, but the unfortunate part we're dealing with now is the trust decisions that I'm talking about. That if and when any issue is being raised, others will elevate it as if there is a witch hunt and so on and so on. I don't believe that matters that were raised in the report will continue itself. I believe that perhaps the state security is on the verge of being fixed of the problems that we know what had happened in the past. I'm not saying things on my own. The reports are there.
All right, Tabiso, no, it's an important point you make. I mean, if we all trusted the State Security Agency, this wouldn't be an issue. I think that's really the other point. Is it Janice on the line from Cape Town? Janice, hi.
Hi, yes, that's right. Thank you, Stephen, for pressing this government and, people for proper answer, because they always trying to glorify themselves. But first of all, I'm talking about I'm a member of Action SA. And according to our policies, all the stuff, we are supposed to be a non-racial political party. But then Herman Mashaba is coming to the stage and telling us, the supporters and to the people, about unconditional support to the blacks, colors, Indians and Asians, not mentioned about whites. So it's a confusion. What about why he's first of all, if you're non-racist, you don't put the names of the race, and it's not the first time. And also, Dr. Moya also say, look, I would like to challenge him. I know that you've got all the TV programs and all the other stuff when you can ask the people, especially Herman Mashaba. I would like to explain, because it's confusion. Many my friends, not the members, but they would like to vote for Herman Mashaba for Action SA. They say, what's going on? Are we out of this? Can we do it, please, for me?
Yeah, all right, Janos, let's see. Thank you. That's an interesting point. I hadn't thought of that. I hadn't seen that, actually. Let me see if we do get a chance to put that to Action SA. Janos on the line from Cape Town.
Hear that? That's the sound of deliciousness in your kitchen after watching Ready Steady Cook. You don't season the same no more. The way you chop, slay. You do it with so much flair, because you've channeled your Salt Bay. Uyashisa. Turn up the heat. Off the bone with the meat. You're in your kitchen prime. Always dish it on time. Need I serve more? Catch Ready Steady Cook weekdays at 7 p.m. on S3 and channel your inner 5-star chef. Channel a better you with S3.
Business owners, don't waste your time searching for an employee that has it all. They do not exist. But I will tell you what does exist. The Kia K2700 Workhorse. It's versatile, powerful, and reliable. It also arrives on time every day. Save your cash with no deposit and only pay 5,799 Rand per month. It's the business partner you've been waiting for. Up your game with the Kia K2700 Workhorse. Visit kia.co.za for more. T's and C's apply.
Kia. Movement that inspires.
The students from Fort Hare University have calculated that only a win will elevate them from the bottom half. Meanwhile, Thunderbirds ladies are in dire need of 3 points to escape from the basement. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Catch the queens of the beautiful game, the University of Fort Hare versus Thunderbirds ladies, on Wednesday 1 May at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
At SFM Radio and at Stephen Grootes on Twitter.
Right, you know the number 086-000-2032. JJ on the line from Polokwane. JJ, hi. This issue about signatures to register to contest the elections in the Electoral Commission.
Stephen, good morning. Yes. I spoke to you yesterday. You said the number must be left there. I left it there. You see, we have got a problem. Things that matter most, we must know that they must not at the mercy of things that matter least. I think that should stay with us. The auditing of the signatures, you don't have to audit each and every signature. Because what is the reason? The reason is to check whether this list that they are bringing, they are honest, they are authentic, they are not fraudulent.
Yeah.
And why should we take the people who are committing fraud into parliament? This list could be audited in 3 days, to tell the honest fact. 3 days they can be audited. Yes. Because what is it that you want to see? You want to see whether these people have collected the authentic signatures. So you simply sample. You can take 10 from this one.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yes. And just go and check, yeah.
You will get everything that you need within 3 days.
Yes. Can I ask you a controversial question, JJ?
Yes.
Okay. Say, for example, a political party comes along, a new party, and commits fraud, or some of its people commit fraud to get the signatures. But the political party is very popular and gets 50%, let's just say, right? They do very well in the election. Should they be disqualified or not? Because
if they committed fraud, they must be disqualified, because you want honest people to lead the country with honesty. The country that we are crying today to say, hey, ANC has got fraudulent people, it's corrupt. You come through corruption, and then what do we expect from you?
No, sure. So I hear that, but they would have wide legitimacy. I mean, can you imagine?
Yes, they will have a good legitimacy, and then they will go to court, and then the court they will say, but this is a fraud. Simple as that.
All right. It's a very interesting. I think it's a very interesting question. I think that it could be
If we were checking each and everything, the Auditors General's report that we are talking about scrutinizing, we will get that after 40 years.
Yeah.
But they come, they take a sample of these things, and then they audit, they give you a report. So to audit signatures, it's simple, because you want the authenticity of this list. If you check 5, you find that this one is fraud, this one is fraud.
Then you know. JJ, all right, and Polokwane, thank you. Let's just very quickly try and squeeze in Hendrico on the line from Carriaga. Government buildings, Hendrico, hi.
Good morning. I watch your show every day, listen to it every day, and I found it very, very interesting. Very informative. Thank you, guys. Yesterday I've been to the Department of Education here in Newton Lake, and the condition of the building and the attitude of the people that work there are very, very, very poor. It seems like the building is falling apart, literally falling apart. Compared to the secular buildings where I work, for instance, and so on.
Yeah.
So what the discussion was about earlier is true. The buildings are not in a good state, and the condition that people are working in is not okay. It seems like the people are on holiday, and the few there that is working must bear the load for everybody else.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to share that with you guys.
Enrico, thank you on the line from Carriaga. Look, I mean, that I think is the experience that people have when they go into government buildings. I think that is the experience. I think you're talking for many people. You're with SAFM 28 minutes after 8.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zaya, Sundown's going to make it 7.
Oh, yes, 7 Heaven is where they're marching to, and they make it look like a walk in the park. That is Masandawana. They took a decisive step towards clinching their 7th consecutive league title. They had a commanding 3-0 win against TS Galaxy last night. Peter Shalulile returning to form, netting twice, giving the Brazilians a comfortable lead by halftime. The victory at Loftus Versfeld saw Sundowns extending their impressive unbeaten streak to 23 games in the DStv Premiership. Substitute Temenkosi Lord sealing the deal in the second half, pushing Sundowns to the brink of another championship. They now face a potential title sealing match against arch rivals Kaizer Chiefs this coming Thursday. Now, rugby news. Saviwe Soyezwapi says he's pleased to return to the Springbok Sevens team for the first time this season. He's looking forward to the Blitzbox contest this weekend at the HSBC Sevens tournament in Singapore. The former Blitzbox captain last played for the Springbok Sevens in June last year before suffering a serious knee injury in a practice match in October last year.
Yeah, it almost feels like a debut all over again.
It's a great relief for me and a massive privilege just to be back. You just realize how special it is to be out here on the field and just enjoying every moment and taking everything in. No, it's massive. I just can't wait to be out there, and I was just grateful to be out in camp with the boys again, just to train at that intensity again and to just challenge myself. You always suffer in this game, and it's always tough. It's a very fast game. But when you're out there, those are exactly the things you miss. Well, you just want to get tired again. You want to work hard for your teammates, and I really can't wait. I'm excited to be out here. I'm excited to be on the field. I'm really excited to be back.
Former Blitzbok captain Siviwe Soyuzwapi on Sunrise. Now, cricket action, Kolkata Knight Riders. They had a wonderful 7-wicket win with 21 balls to spare. That's against the Delhi Capitals. Took place in Kolkata yesterday. Delhi suffered a dismal batting performance. They limped to 153 for 9 after choosing to bat first. And KKR were led by Philip Salt. They attacked the target with gusto, moving into second place on the log, 4 points behind the Rajasthan Royals. And finally, tennis. Britain's Cameron Norrie out of the Madrid Masters after a third-round defeat to Casper Ruud, while Rafa Nadal survived a scare to win a 3-hour epic against Pedro Cachin, 6-1, 6-7, 6-3. Now, of course, Nadal will face the Czech Republic's Jiří Lehecka next. That's a wrap of your sport on Sunrise. We'll bring you more sport on SAFM around 12:30. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thank you. Who should control the police? The council, the city where you live, the province where you live, or the national government? That's next. You with SAFM leading the conversation. Good morning. It's 8:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, a coalition of health advocacy groups will today march to the Gauteng Department of Health Officers. Section 27 Cancer Alliance and the Treatment Action Campaign are calling on the department to use 784 million rand set aside by Treasury towards cancer treatment. Condolences continue to pour in following the death of former 3-time world boxing champion Dingaan Thobela. He was 57 years old. And bad news for motorists is that the price of petrol is set to increase by around 37 cents a litre from midnight tonight. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Noticeable lack of traffic around this morning, which by itself is interesting. A couple of crashes around Gauteng. One is the Mike 1 South at Marlborough Drive. So delays coming off the N1 Buccleuch on your way very slowly in towards Sandton. Also a crash in Pretoria East on Solomon Mhlongo down by Olympus and Old Farm Junction. That traffic stays heavily backed from Linwood Road, moving west, moving through Pretoria East towards sort of, if you like, Atterbury Road side. And that section of Solomon Mhlongo is still sucking quite a heavy bind. Durban's N2, super heavy backlogs this morning. Once you get into sort of Queen Nandi Drive territory, it stays heavy all the way through and to a point just before you get to Gateway. Cape Town, N1 towards the city, fairly slow still from the Parow area. N2 inbound from Bunga Avenue, Lunga through to Hospital Ben's busy. Also the M3 from sort of Wynberg Hill up past Rhodes Drive through UCT into Hospital Ben stays pretty slow as well. And roadworks on the R72 Settlers Way. Don't forget about those. If you're driving in over Steve Biko Bridge towards East London, peak hour traffic in the mornings does get quite heavily backed up. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
27 minutes now to 9 the time. Good morning. Over the last few months, there's been a conversation sparked by the DA in the Western Cape around whether the power of policing should be devolved. In other words, instead of the situation where we have now, where there is the National South African Police Service, there'll be more provincial and local powers over policing. At the moment, there's the SAPS, and then there are also metro police services in several major cities, including places like Cape Town, eThekwini, Tshwane, Ekurhuleni and Joburg. Sometimes it would appear these police services may have a difficult relationship. A month ago, a member of the Metro Police Service in Joburg was shot dead by members of the SAPS in Soweto after her son was pulled over for reckless driving. When SAPS officers told her they were going to arrest her son, she went inside, procured a gun and started shooting the officers. They shot back, killing her. So then, is the devolution of policing power a good idea? If we do this, are there certain things we need to avoid? Is it possible to stop the rivalry between various law enforcement forces, or could this all be a distraction from better ways to improve the quality of the policing that we have? First this morning, Professor Kolofelo Rukubo is a criminologist and head of department in the Department of Law, Safety and Security Management at the Tshwane University of Technology. Then Dr. Guy Lambs, the director of the Conflict, Peacebuilding and Risk Unit at the University of Stellenbosch, and Professor Nirmala Devi Gopal is the academic lead in the discipline of Criminology and Forensic Studies at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. We start with Professor Kolofelo Rukubo. Professor Rukubo, good morning and thank you for your time this morning.
Morning to the listeners.
Different countries manage their police in different ways. In some places, it is managed by national government. In other places, the United States is a good example, police forces are managed at a very local level. Does this change the effectiveness of police?
It definitely does. And when you look at the current crime landscape in South Africa, obviously it suggests that this policing system be reorganized. It suggests a paradigm shift. It definitely reflects that we failed with the national approach, like we have the SABC. Now, what does this suggest? It suggests that we localize our responses. It suggests that the now role of local government in crime prevention be considered. Because if you zoom into our policies, we will start with the National Crime Prevention Strategy 1996, which was very clear with how local government or whose responsibility is it in crime prevention and control. Then the 1998 White Paper on Safety and Security was very particular with local government in particular, that it should focus on crime prevention and clearly specified 3 areas of focus as per jurisdiction. Then the 2016 White Paper also specified the role of local government. Why do we have local government related policies, but when it comes to implementation, we still not even try to tap into the legal prescripts that will give local government more powers to do that. On the other hand, we develop policy, we adopt them. But on the other, our constitution is built in a particular way, where now the definition, for example, of criminal investigation does not clearly include municipal law enforcement, for example. Then in 2022, they introduced the Integrated Crime and Violence Prevention Strategy, which still now dragged municipal managers, for example, to do what? To establish capacity for preventing crime and violence. But when you do that, you should also tap into the legal prescript that will allow such. Right? Now, generally, municipalities should have more significant influence over policing because they are strategically placed. They can do thorough community audit to understand the crime level and to respond accordingly. Currently, we use one-size-fits-all, wherein now Cape Town is different to Gauteng or any other metro. So how Gauteng response should be as per Gauteng's crime level and the socio-economic dynamics, right? But you find that with SABC, community policing is community policing. And community policing might work in Cape Town and might not work in Gauteng. So we need now to do what? To tap into policy, because because now the devolution of policing powers to metropolitan government level. However, we should not forget or shy away from the complicities of our local government or of municipalities. Currently, there are certain municipalities that cannot even tap into issues of crime prevention or budget accordingly. If you tap into their integrated development plan and zoom into how they plan around safety and security, they don't even focus much, yet there are prescripts that mandate them to do so. So now it ends up with what? With SABC, because they have more powers. Why do we have to now utilize more resources on safety when our powers are limited? And again, the country should extensively review this, because we do have issues around police response. There has been the size and complexity of our South African police service. There are resource shortages. There's issues with police community ratio. So now, when a particular metro is assessed and be found to be compliant, right, then the legal prescripts can be amended, particularly for that municipality, because obviously an audit would have reflected that this municipality can handle particular power. Right, this municipality can expedite issues of courts and all that. They cannot only detain and wait for SAPS.
So how small would we go? How local would we go? We talk about councils, but let me give you an example. Alexandra, you walk across a bridge from Alexandra into Sandton, okay? And I would suggest they probably may require different types of policing. So would we have an Alexandra authority and a Sandton one, or would they need to be run by the same people? What I'm trying to get to is, how small would the area be? How local would we go?
Local government, now, the issues of jurisdiction, that should be clearly specified. But as we tap into the policies I've highlighted, they are very particular. Each municipality, right, should have its municipal safety plan, should indicate how it responds to issues of social crime prevention, for example, or crime prevention through environmental design. Then those municipalities have their own district, isn't it? Then the district will be able to assist. All these municipalities must have their own structures and their community safety plan and their community safety forums that can liaise with what? District community policing forums. Then they can go to the way they are managing their political affairs. Right? They have district and this and that. And if you zoom into their manifestos, they are talking about, we're going to ensure you are safe and structures should do ABC. It should be that way. It should be that. It's just that they don't plan accordingly to ensure that that promise comes to fruition. So now, we can just zoom into one municipality to say, how are you ensuring that you work with collaboration and coordination with the SAPS, so that issues of power dynamics can be attended to from that level? Because if we start at local level, the local level governance might not even understand the community structures or systems or issues the way a local municipality would do.
Is there any reason why, in policing terms, for example, if you look at Kuruleni and Joburg, right, there's a dividing line sort of at the Eastgate Shopping Centre as you come off the highway there. Now, in policing terms, now I understand that that's a political distinction, but would there be any point in having two separate police officers on either side, two separate policing forces on either side of that sort of border? I don't know if there would be. What I'm trying to get to is, do we really need to follow the council lines for police services?
What I would say is we just need thorough and extensive innovative coordination strategy, wherein as a police officer in South Africa, yet we will be talking of local and provincial and so forth. However, the issue of jurisdiction should be thoroughly attended to, because currently we do have problems emanating from such. And now, when time comes for them to respond to crime, those must not even matter. Those must not even matter, because issues of demarcation in Gauteng, for example, that will be a challenge. Like you were saying, there's a fence that suggests this is another district and this is another district. But the coordination, the collaboration, a coordinated effort, innovative mechanisms that will be deployed will suggest that we all have a responsibility to ensure A this side and A on the other side.
Okay, Professor, thank you very much indeed. Professor Kolofelo Rakobo is a criminologist and head of the department in the Department of Law, Safety and Security Management at Tshwane University of Technology. 17 minutes now to 9 the time. You're with SFM. Your mediated conversation around whether we should devolve responsibility for the police from national government to provincial or local government continues. Dr. Guy Lambs, the director of the Conflict, Peace Building and Risk Unit at the University of Stellenbosch. Dr. Lamb, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen. Good morning to listeners.
If we were to change the system, it would be a huge change. Is it worth the change, or should we keep things as they are and just try and improve the system we have now?
I think the system we have at the moment is not perfect, but if we were to kind of go through a radical change, that would be incredibly disruptive. It would require major legislative changes, differences in budget allocation. I think, a sort of top-down national approach to policing has pros and cons. I think certainly from a pros point of view, it means that there is supposedly a kind of a logical, rational decision-making process around how policing resources are allocated. So it makes sure that kind of poorer, underdeveloped areas do get policing resources, where if we go for all the resources go to, at the municipal level, local government level, it means that certain places won't get any policing resources or minimal policing resources, and, because it's linked to problems of service delivery, problems of, revenue generation and those kind of places. I think the kind of practical situation we're looking at the moment here is that our national police obviously have a kind of a national focus, provincial focus. Some have a district focus, but it's more of a kind of a cluster and sort of policing precinct process. But they don't really have a city approach. And also within the cities, you've got mayors and mayoral committees that don't have much control over policing. So they obviously want to improve safety and security in their cities, but they don't have significant, police resources at their disposal to do this. Some cities have set up metro police, some cities have kind of law enforcement divisions to deal with bylaw enforcement, but they really don't have substantial resources. So if they want to make drastic improvements to policing, they have to negotiate with the provincial police commissioner or the national police commissioner. And of course, when you get differences in kind of political party governance kind of arrangements, then we tend to have disagreements and delays and, processes going awry. So I think the situation very much at the moment is we need kind of a better relationship between Metro Police and SABC. We also need to be looking at the powers of the Metro Police and law enforcement, because I think what the DA has put on paper, and certainly the Mayor of Cape Town is asking for and worth looking into, is about whether, Metro Police should have, the capacity to kind of investigate crime, which they don't have at the moment. And given that there is a crisis in policing, given that the SAPS has, been pretty much gone to Parliament earlier this year saying we need more money, and this is where we have serious constraints and shortages, and, part of that is around the detective services. So I think it's about empowering and providing, more resources within reason and effective controls at the sort of metro level.
Is there a substitute for experience and knowledge of a local community? In other words, someone who knows, someone who maybe comes from, and I know this can be a big debate in other policing services, someone who comes from, the informal settlement that they're currently policing. There must surely be advantages to having the same people on the beat in the same place for a long period of time, managed by someone who understands the area. But I've watched enough American cop movies to know that corruption creeps into those situations too, so sometimes you do need to rotate people.
Yeah, that's the general practice within police. Having that local knowledge is really important with local relationships. The most effective station commanders, cluster commanders, are the ones who have a good network of kind of community players, community stakeholders. Also, the most effective police are the police that are trusted. But there is a drawback to that in the sense that, they can become corrupted by organized criminal networks, criminals within those areas. They may pursue vested interests. So police tend to rotate people, but the kind of unfortunate, the opportunity cost of that is you lose that particular knowledge. But that is why we look at the sort of legislation and the strategies that were mentioned by the previous speaker around the kind of police professionalism. Is that the police are professional and they respect the population of their policing, is those relationships can be built up. And so that's why sort of having that professionalism is so important.
The National Police at the moment have specialised police task teams for political killings or crimes affecting children, that kind of thing. No matter what happens, I imagine it would be important to keep those, and those would have to stay managed at the national level?
Absolutely. Because, these kind of problems, these specialised types of crimes aren't confined to one particular city. They're often national or international. So we do need dedicated teams at the national level to deal with it, but I think they need to be flexible, where if they are, more prevalent and acute in certain cities, to bring in resources in those cities and those areas to help out. So it is about, as the previous speaker mentioned, about better coordination and better sharing of resources.
Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Guy Lamb. I really do appreciate the time. The Director in the Conflict, Peacebuilding and Risk Unit at the University of Stellenbosch. In a moment, we'll hear from Professor Nirmala Gopal, an academic leader in the discipline of criminology and forensic studies at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. It's 11 minutes now to 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Not so much congestion around the country this morning, but there are a couple of incidents. There's been a crash on the R24 coming out of the airport just by Edenvale Road. So if you're on your way to Galulis, that's slow. There's also been a collision on the Mike 1 North near Carr Street in the double-decker. So the Mike 1 from Boyson's, the M2 from Joe Schlovo, those routes heavily backed into the Crown interchange and up towards the Braamfontein exits into that collision. The Mike 1 from the N1 highway after an earlier crash at Marlborough Drive stays busy coming through Buccleuch on your way down to Sandton, and there's just a bit of a backlogging going on at Buccleuch interchange. So if you're wanting to get off the highways and up into Midrand, the top of the N3, the top of the N1 on those links onto the N1 North Midrand, if you like, in the Buccleuch interchange, quite slow on those ramp sections. Solomon Mhlanga crash earlier this morning involving a pedestrian. Looks like it's fatal. It happened at Old Farm Olympus Junction. Still very slow on that section of Solomon Mhlanga as you come west from Linwood Road. Durban's N2 still jam-packed up into the Gateway exit. If you're on your way to the airport, make sure you've got a bit of extra time to get through that. And the N2 southbound is queuing from Umgena Road into Spaghetti Junction. It's likely to stay under queuing pressure as it does on a daily basis from now right through to about 4 p.m. today. Cape Town, N1 inbound still sluggish from Parow through towards the city centre. Marine Drive behind that stays busy coming through Pardon Island. And the M3, plenty of traffic this morning from around about the top of Wynberg Hill all the way through passing UCT and then just sluggish into Hospital Bend. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Getting more money into your pockets has never been this simple and exciting. With SABC's new Simple Watch and Win game show, you can get more Zaga in your pockets. Catch more Zaga every weekday on SABC 1 at 9 p.m. You could win your share of 50,000 Rand. All you have to do to win is give the correct answer for the day. Just dial star 120 star double through to hash to register and play. The cost is R1.50 per minute. You could win big with more Zaga. Only on SABC 1.
The SA Sports Awards recognises and honours the best in sport on and off the field, celebrating 30 years of freedom through sporting excellence. Select your favourite People's Choice nominee. A. Ebenetzebeth. B. Gerdestein. C. Siekelisi. D. Percy Tau. E. Kirsten Nishava. SMS A, B, C, D or E to 32020. SMSs cost R1.50. T's and C's apply. Visit dsac.gov.za. Catch the 17th edition of the SA Sports Awards on Sunday the 5th of May at 8 p.m. live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC 1. Hashtag Izinjas a Game.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
9 minutes now to 9. Continuing your mediated conversation here on SAFM around whether or not the councils and provinces should have more control over police services. Professor Nirmala Gopal is the academic leader in the discipline of criminology and forensic studies at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Professor Gopal, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Good morning, Stephen, and it's wonderful to be part of this very critical dialogue.
We see there is a huge conversation around the quality of the policing that we have in South Africa. Would this be the best way to improve policing, or are there better ways to make our police officers more effective?
Yeah, I think that's a very critical question, and it's an area that I'm quite frequently commenting around. But I want to take a step back, Stephen, and I want to ask a question. What informed this particular proposal? And I think it's a proposal at this stage. And I'm not sure, and perhaps this is the kind of information that we need at this point in time, is what really informed this aim or this proposal. And does this proposal have some scientific evidence that justifies this particular conversation or the proposal towards restructuring? I think it's a form of restructuring the police. And in the absence of that kind of data, I think we may be moving into a space that could, we're not guaranteed of a more efficient or a more effective policing service. I'm just also wondering, has the police or has the department of the portfolio of the policing, have they done a feasibility study Have they done a needs analysis? Do they know exactly what is required? And I think one of my other colleagues mentioned that the requirements or the context would be different in each of the provinces, in each of the districts perhaps. So do we have enough evidence that tells us, that points to the fact that we need to either devolve the powers or we need to collaborate between SABC and Metro Policing at this point in time?
It seems to me that a lot of the conversation that we have, everybody just wants more police officers, and maybe they want them to use their guns more often. I don't see, I'm afraid to say, I mean, maybe I've missed it, but I don't see much sort of scientific discussion around policing and what's the best way to manage it. And is that one of maybe the weaknesses in our national debate at the moment?
I think absolutely true. I don't believe that we can go into, restructuring of such a huge and critical portfolio without having evidence, without it being evidence-based. So the restructure should actually be prefaced on evidence that we currently have. And as you rightfully point out, I don't think we have sufficient evidence that actually warrants and/or justifies this kind of restructure at this point in time. However, I want to say that, or in addition, we should ensure that we don't duplicate functions. And I'm not sure at this point in time also whether we have that kind of scientific evidence that tells us or shows us whether there are duplication of functions, and also how effective is each one of these services, the Metro Police Service and the South African Police Service. Which areas are they most effective in? So if there's effectiveness in particular areas, why do we want to reinvent the wheel? Or why do we want to throw the baby out with the bathwater? I think those are critical conversations and questions that the task team, I'm assuming, that's put together to look into this matter, needs to ask themselves.
Is there a risk that this just becomes a distraction? That instead of actually focusing on what's really the hard, sort of rational, scientific work of trying to improve the effectiveness of every police officer and the way in which they conduct their duties in a particular community, instead we end up having, conversations around who should be in charge of them instead?
No, absolutely. I think it's probably a distraction, but also we could be displacing the problem. If we are saying, and if there's evidence to indicate that there are some areas of SABC and Metro Policing that are ineffective, there are some spaces that are ineffective, are we then not just displacing the problem? Are we just not combining the problem? And in combining the problem, we're enhancing the problem. So I think it's displacement as well as a distraction. But I think also, Stephen, an important stakeholder that we are missing here is the community. How does the community feel? Have we solicited the views of the community in terms of devolving these powers? What is the level of trust and confidence in the community to transform or restructure policing in South Africa?
I think moving forward, policing is going to become more and more of a political issue because we've seen such a big increase in violent crime. I realize that those increases are sort of stabilizing, but at a very high level. So there's going to be more pressure on government and on the police to, sort of inverted commas, do something. Are there 2 or 3 more effective solutions or interventions that we could make immediately that would remove some of this pressure?
I think in the first instance, we should be separating politics and policing. We should be having a police service that is objective. And if we, instill that kind of objectivity, we may have a better rate of conviction. So that for me is the first one. The second one is that my second intervention is to do in-service training, because skills should be evolving because crimes evolve. And our policing service should be 10 steps ahead of our criminals. And the last one is to have better reporting systems. We We live in an age of, we live in a digital era. Are we digitizing the way in which we record a crime? And what is the relationship between the various arms of the criminal justice system? Are they effective? And we should move towards greater effectiveness.
Professor Namala Gopal, thank you. Academic leader in the discipline of criminology and forensic studies at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. I really appreciate the time. My thanks also to Dr. Guy Lamb, the director in the Conflict, Peacebuilding and Risk Unit at the University of Stellenbosch. And starting us off today, Professor Kolofelo Rukobo, the criminologist and head of department in the Department of Law, Safety and Security Management at the Tshwane University of Technology. It's one of those very interesting conversations that can go in lots of different directions. Who should control your local police and who should command and sort of control them? It's a very interesting conversation. It goes to the work that police do in communities as well. Well, as always, 31 days before an election. I don't think it's going to be a quiet day, but it is a public holiday tomorrow. I will be with you tomorrow. And of course, we'll be here with you. We'll be taking your calls and looking at sort of the big issues that come out of Workers' Day as well. From Melissa Mdu, Stanza, myself, look after yourself. And Paul, you with SFM leading the conversation. It's 9 o'clock.
In our top stories, a march by lobby groups and cancer patients, and mental evaluation for Metro officer accused of killing his girlfriend. Good morning. A coalition of health advocacy groups will today march to the Gauteng Department of Health Officers. Section 27, Cancer Alliance and the Treatment Action Campaign are calling on the department to use 784 million rand set aside by Treasury towards cancer treatment. Gauteng chairperson of the Treatment Action Campaign is Sidwell Mbata.
We have over 3,000 patients that cannot access the radiation oncology services in the province. For example, in Charlotte Maseke, in 2020 they used to have about 7 operational radio oncology services on site, but now it's only 2. So that means the situation plunges over 3,000 patients who need those services into chaos, and it's such unfortunate. So it's a serious problem.
The bail application of a 27-year-old Durban Metro police officer charged with the murder of his girlfriend has been postponed for him to be sent to a district surgeon for mental observation. Sizwe Ngema appeared briefly in the Durban Magistrates Court on charges of murder and theft. Ngema is accused of stabbing his girlfriend Yolanda Kuzwayo to death last month and then posting a video of her body on social media. State prosecutor Calvin Govender told the court it was pivotal for the state to proceed with Ngema's bail application once results of his mental assessments were presented to court.
Perusal of the said police docket and further investigations with the investigating officer, the state now finds it prudent that the accused be sent for a district surgeon assessment based on what evidence we've got in the docket prior to the bail application proceeding. The state's application today is for the matter to be adjourned for the district surgeon to mentally.
Condolences continue to pour in following the death of former 3-time world boxing champion Dingaan Thobela. He was 57 years old. He was found dead in his Mayfair apartment by members of his family and police after they struggled to get in touch with him. Former world boxing champion Jan Bergman says Thobela was a very good fighter.
Dingaan did very well in his boxing career. He became WBO lightweight champion, WBA lightweight champion, and in the next 5 or 8 years, he came back and boxed the UK guy, and he win the WBC title in middleweight. I was very, very impressed with him.
The city of Cape Town says they are battling a blaze on Table Mountain. Fire and Rescue spokesperson Jermaine Carlson says the fire is currently high up in the Orange Kloof and Fernwood area and poses no danger to any properties. He says the fire on the lower slopes of Kirstenbosch is still inaccessible.
The fire that started in the early hours of Sunday morning is still active, with a fire line clearly visible on Table Mountain. The city's fire and rescue service is doing periodic reconnaissance throughout the area, and crews from Table Mountain National Parks, Working on Fire, NCC and Volunteer Wildfire Service are still working the fire line tirelessly. They were backed by aerial support yesterday, and the cooler weather today should aid in firefighting efforts.
Bad news for motorists is that the price of petrol is set to increase by around 37 cents a litre from midnight tonight. The Department of Energy says the price of diesel will decrease by up to 36 cents per litre and illuminating paraffin will go down by 25 cents a litre at the retail level. The price of LP gas will decrease by 46 cents per kilogram. The Department of Energy spokesperson Robert Marquez says the increases are due to international factors.
These prices were affected by the higher oil prices and weaker rand during the period under review. The petrol prices are increasing mainly due to higher demand for driving season in the Northern Hemisphere. The slate levy remains unchanged at 21.92 cents a litre on both petrol and diesel. We have also observed that the shipping costs were lower during the period under review compared to the previous period.
Further field and finally, Britain's King Charles is to carry out his first major public engagement since his cancer diagnosis. The King and Queen Camilla will visit a hospital and specialist cancer centre today in a public show of support for staff, patients and ongoing research work. Aside from attending an Easter Sunday church service, the King has stayed away from public events and crowds. Recapping the top story, a coalition of health advocacy groups will today march to the Gauteng Department of Health Officers. Section 27, Cancer Alliance and the Treatment Action Campaign are calling on the department to use the 784 million rand set aside by Treasury towards cancer treatment. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 106.6 FM in Bloemfontein.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
South Africa has one of the finest safety records in the world when it comes to aviation. Am I spot on in saying that?
Yes, we are. We are number one in Africa and some other internationally. We are up there. Our standard is quite high. In fact, many countries like your China, some of the Middle East, even India, they do come here in South Africa. We train them here. They get trained here and they go and fly their airlines in their respective countries. So we are number one. That's why even last year we were appointed to chair the International Civil Aviation International Conference, where Mepo Pikosa was president of the conference.
Putejo Mojapele, an aviation analyst.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM. Freedom Month on SAFM. The month in which we had our first democratic election 30 years ago. This Freedom Month, as we reflect on the progress made thus far, we continue to commemorate the selfless sacrifices made for our democracy and freedom. SAFM, leading the conversation.
The Talking Point on SAFM. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
These last few months have indicated, once again, that despite decades of ruthless oppression, the people of South Africa have not acquiesced in their degradation. Their spirit has not been broken, even by murder and torture on a large scale. Without arms and almost without hope, they have again protested and being treated as less than human. We who live in freedom and whose claim to national sovereignty rests only on the principles of human equality and national self-determination have no alternative but to give them whatever support we can give.
That's the voice of Julius Mwalimu Nyerere, the late former president of Tanzania. We thought to conclude our Freedom Month series by thanking the frontline states for their contribution in housing our liberation movements. And with that, welcome to Tuesday's edition of The Talking Point. My name is Khomotso Keiji Mweketsi. I'm in for Kathy Mushahlana. On SFM as we lead the conversation, and our studio numbers whenever you want to join the conversation: 086 000 2032, 086 000 2032. The SMS line is 41391. That SMS will come to you though at around 50, and we are on the WhatsApp line 061 410 4107. We are on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter. We are at SFM Radio, and please hashtag SFM Talking Point whenever you want to talk to us. So coming up on the program today, we open the lines for you, of course, between now and 10 o'clock on that 086 000 2032 number. If, by the way, you want to send a voice note, make it short and sweet and to the point, and send it to the 061 410 4107. It would be nice to know what is on your mind on this Tuesday. We are South Africans, and as of yesterday, we were 1 month away from the elections. So as of today, we're just now a couple of days away from the elections, the national elections that will be held on the 29th of May of this year. So we open the lines for you between now and 10 o'clock, whatever really is on your mind. You can call us. 10 o'clock, we are going to talk personal finance with Brian Hesh this morning. Brian, will be unpacking your questions that you've submitted throughout the month of April, and he is going to be our guest in the studio. And after 11, 2 weeks ago, we started a conversation. I think I was here. We started a conversation surrounding the right to work, job creation, and the dignity that comes with a living wage. We further expanded this discussion by unpacking if political parties have provided in their manifestos reasonable economic interventions that will address the unemployment crisis that we face in the country. Where we last left the conversation, a critical point had been raised surrounding the types of jobs being created and whose vocation had been excluded, as well as the impact of austerity measures on work prospects within the public service. So in today's discussion, hopefully as we round off, we're going to turn our attention to a daring new promise that has entered the public discourse as a mechanism to combat the unemployment situation in lieu of low job creation. Political parties believe that this intervention that would address expanded unemployment would help. So, we're going to listen in on some of the promises that have been made by the major political parties on what they call the new graduate grant. We're going to talk to Dominic Brown, the Programs Manager of Economic Justice at Alternative Information Development Center. Duma Qubule, who is a columnist and an independent economist, and Crystal Duncan Williams, who's a project lead at Youth Capital. And we are going to hopefully, round off that discussion that we started 2 weeks ago. And we'll round off, of course, with the book reading. The book is still Why Men Hurt Women by Kopano Ratela. So what's on your mind? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot that's on your mind, right? I'm sure there's a lot on your mind. It's now what? Today's the 30th, which effectively means it's about how many days to the elections? About 30 days to the elections. No, 29 days. I'm lying. It's 29 days to the elections. 28 days, because on the 29th day, we go and vote, right? On the 29th day, we go and vote. I watch the security cluster briefing that happened on the weekend. We've